Awesome.
I doubt anybody else will see it.
Honestly,
don't worry. You won't get canceled. Wink.
I think I've probably done plenty in my life to be canceled. And no, I think that's amazing. Like when you told me the idea for it, I was like, that's actually pretty neat. Like I think what I had brought up initially, or my thought was, those time capsules, like when you're in school, right? And you're burying these things that
I'm just going to listen real quick. See if I can hear you. Make sure. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you're burying these things that are like treasures in your life at that moment in time. And I don't know, like when you said that, it just something resonated inside me where it's like, yeah, like what a great idea. Like, because I don't know, like what are the greatest treasures other than like the people that are in your life, or in what form or fashion throughout the course of our lives. So I think it's an amazing idea. So and you've got the resources to do it, so why not?
Yeah, it's all just sitting here. Might as well do it.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah, the idea really came when I was in the trip to the border of Myanmar and Thailand, and thinking about, once again, the people in your life. And thinking, okay, I'm going to go, I'm here, but I'm alone. You're actually sort of like alone there. It's not, it'll be really fun. We're going to go in March. We're going to go in March, and again, we'll probably be a much bigger group in November because the weather's really nice then.
Yeah.
But just thinking like how fun it is to come and help these kids, help these people with a group of friends where you can banter in English.
Yeah.
And there's not that translation of a joke or
right.
And that happened to me a lot when we were in the other country, and all the time I would say to myself, that was such a wasted good joke.
Dude, I get it. I have teenagers. Like, I waste good jokes on the daily. So I totally get it. Yeah.
And you're laughing inside like, that was pretty good, but nobody got to experience it. I feel like that idea of having a gang of buddies that you can share some life with. And so this really came from that. Like, who are my gang of buddies? And who would I want to like sit and talk to for 3 hours? And who could actually pull that off? Yeah. And it's actually easy. Now I'm realizing it's actually easier than I first thought.
Yeah.
But it's awesome to hang out with some friends and just, like, I don't know about you, but sometimes you go to lunch with somebody and you're just getting started and both you have to leave.
Yeah.
It's just getting warmed up.
Yeah.
And this kind of breaks that off.
Well, it's interesting because, like, when you asked me at first, I was like, what do you talk about for 3 hours? Like, you listen to a Joe Rogan podcast and you're like, in some cases it goes by super fast. You're like, wow, great conversation, And in others it doesn't. And it's like, what, almost like what qualifies me to have a 3 hour conversation with anybody. Right. And like brought up all this stuff. It's like, well, what's so special about me, or like, why can I do it? And it was interesting. Like, it just where my mind went from like, oh yeah, this is actually just talking to JR and just like wherever the conversation goes in life. And it's no different than what we probably do in our normal day to day, just given the fact that the only distinction is that there's a microphone and there's a camera, and which I think is just something to get over.
How many times have you had a conversation with a person in business or just a friend or whatever, but you're in this lunch meeting and something came out, you go, man, that was genius. I wish my kids could hear that.
Yeah.
There's no way in the world you could reproduce that. We've just discovered a way.
You figured it out.
We could capture it and have a way for, if we did have something really, really interesting, we could capture it and say, oh, I think my staff needs to hear this, or my wife would probably like to hear my heart on this. And I said it so well there.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I will never restate that in a one-on-one conversation with my wife as well as I did with my buddy. Right. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. So there's a couple genius things of this that I'm excited to see and explore.
That's neat. Awesome.
So you're in a brainstorming experimental phase.
That's great.
After the last one I did, I realized for just the if people are interested of these, like seeing what we did, cutting the shorts down, and the way I was able to cut the shorts was like, technology today is amazing. Yeah. And the things that it was able to cut out really interesting things pretty quick. And I found what it looked for was stories. So I wrote these notes down on
when you say it, are you using AI?
Yeah, the AI.
Okay, interesting.
It found stories and said, this was an interesting story. I thought, that's
fascinating.
I like AI, but I'm actually terrified of AI. I actually have this love-hate for it.
I think a lot of us do. Like, I just read this thing the other day where it talked about how there was some AI program, and it realized that it had become obsolete, and it realized it was being deleted, and it tried to circumvent the process of it being deleted so it could almost like keep itself alive. That's the type of stuff where you hear about and you're like, okay, that's like Terminator 2 type stuff that kind of freaks me out a little bit. So you wonder, how intuitive is it? How much can it learn? That's the type of stuff that I think for me where it's just a little, when I see Elon Musk putting robots everywhere and I go, okay, like, cool, but really?
Well, you bring up a really good point with Elon. So I love what he did in this last election.
Yes.
I love being able to drive one of his cars.
100%.
I like the idea that we're having communication anywhere in the world.
Yep.
And I'm able to put up a little flat thing in a refugee camp. Mm-hmm. And these people actually have access to me now. I love that.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
But I'm a little terrified if someone says, you know what, Elon's pretty powerful. He's just one man. What if I take him out and now we're in charge of all of that?
Yeah.
That's the part that kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, I think a lot of it that is, there's a lot that's scary about it. But at the same time, so grateful for what he's done. When you look at what he did from the transition of Twitter to X and just the way that he's done it. You hear some of the stories where he sets every employee down in front of him and says, you've got 5 minutes to tell me what you do here. And if you can't justify your existence, you're going to get fired. And then subsequently he proceeds to fire 80% of the staff there, right? Like, you listen to things like that and you realize, like, oh, wow, this is actually like, this man is ordained for this time, right? Mm-hmm. When you look at that and you look at what Trump wants him and Vivek to do, when you look at the Department of Efficiency or Governmental Efficiency or whatever.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. And at the same time, you look at that and Starlink and all the things that he's responsible for thought leading. But at the same time, you're right, like, terrifying, because there are a lot of people that are there are a lot of people driving around in Teslas right now that are really, really angry at Elon Musk, right?
Right, hilarious.
Which is hilarious. Like, the irony behind it is crazy, right? So,
very, very funny.
Yeah, so I think it is, man, we are in an interesting time. There's no doubt about it. So,
I discovered something last night. Notebook LM. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay, this is wild. So you take anything you want to learn.
Yeah.
And so I took, there was a video of the Bible Society or whatever. They talk about the Lord's Prayer. Mm-hmm. I put the Lord's Prayer, I copy and pasted the Lord's Prayer into it. And then I have my personal lessons that I have learned. Mm-hmm. All of my study notes from the Lord's Prayer. I put it in there. Mm-hmm. It had a podcast going back. Well, I'll play it for you. So it has a podcast, conversation.
Notebook LM, huh?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to pull this up. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to play. Oh, no, did it undo? Well, I'm going to see if I can play this for you. Because it's a conversation. Notebook LM. There it is. All right, we're going to log into it. Oh, because I'm in airplane mode. So it creates this conversation where you can learn pretty much anything through a conversation of two people. And it boils down, so you could take 3 hours of notes and it will boil it down to this conversation. You can't tell if it's two people or two AI.
Really?
I want to play it for you because
so it doesn't just dictate your notes. It makes it
conversational.
A conversation. That's wild.
Pretty wild, pretty scary. I love it.
Yeah. Right.
But yeah, because my daughter, when she goes to optometrist. Okay, here it goes. Okay, it's gonna play this. It's gonna load up. Check out this. Oh, I have to reload it. Let's see if one of the other ones is loaded. Okay, it's going to take a while to load that. Doesn't take a ton of time, but it load. Okay, let's see when it loads. And you just have to hear this conversation. I don't think you can tell. It'll take me some learning of how it does it before I'll figure out, oh, that's AI.
Yeah.
But here you go. Okay.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today we're going to be tackling something pretty massive.
Okay.
Prayer.
Wow. Yeah, big topic.
It's that wild idea that we can actually talk to the God of the universe.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it.
And to help us unpack this, we're going to be looking at a couple of sources.
Okay.
One is this awesome video from Bible Project that breaks down one of the most famous prayers ever.
Which one?
The Lord's Prayer.
Oh, yeah. Classic.
But then to make things even more interesting,
You got my attention.
we're also going to bring in this piece called the Unfair Prayer.
Okay, I haven't heard of that one.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Intrigued.
It gives us this modern take on prayer.
That's crazy. That's absolutely wild.
I haven't seen a lot of things that blew my mind.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
That's wild. Because so the unfair prayer is that journey that you went on with the Lord, just about the Lord's Prayer and like what He spoke to you through that. Because I know you and I talked about that for a while too, right?
Yeah.
So you're integrating that with the Bible teaching you had, putting it together, and then from that inputting it into that.
And it created a 20-minute conversation about all of that.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Where are we going? So, and I'm thinking practically my daughter's going to optometry school.
Yeah.
Part of optometry school is they take all the notes every day. So someone transcribes everything.
Yeah.
Actually, now we'll go to AI. Nobody's going to transcribe
Totally.
anything.
Yep.
It's going to go into AI. She can put all those notes into this, and it will have the hour-long lecture boiled down to 10 minutes.
That's
in a conversation.
That's pretty fascinating, right? Which at the same time, I would think that there's, and again, I'm making an assumption, so maybe I'm totally incorrect, but I would think that if I'm listening to notes being dictated to me, which is better than transcribing them yourself, I guess, from an energy output standpoint, like maybe not as memorable, but I would certainly remember a conversation or parts of a conversation more so than I would remember just being told or having an outline dictated to me based on a lecture.
The agenda,
right? Yeah, 100%.
Remember those days?
Yeah.
Here, we're going to go over the agenda.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, I should skip today.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man, because, I mean, again, you want to go on the treadmill. You want to go run through the city. You want to go,
So
whatever.
she's going to have class, like actual in-person class. Yep. That will be put into notes.
Yep.
And now knowing all that was the big sales pitch for the school, really, is like how they get everything transcribed for the students. She'll be able to take the video link, the notes, everything from the class, and put it in this app and turn it into a conversation she can listen to while she's on the treadmill. It's wild.
Dude, where education is and where it's going that's wild.
Now, if you put in, I was thinking about this because I noticed when I put the Bible Project in there was a couple things that it brought up that I was like, that's not what I'm going after at all.
Uh-huh.
It's true. It was all true stuff, but it wasn't where the unfair prayer goes.
Right.
So, yeah, you have to understand the input you give it is going to give, it's going to tell its own story. So,
did you have the ability to omit or edit some of that stuff? So
I put everything in there.
So you could see it, and then you could be like, okay, that I want to cut that out or avoid that.
It was good stuff. It wasn't wrong. It was more like, that's not what I'm
just
talking about.
Just not in alignment with
right.
Yeah.
But imagine you got like politics.
Oh my
And
gosh.
you start inputting in the politics you want. Now it could go wrong real fast.
I would think it could absolutely.
Or education.
Sure.
Which we're doing it already with humans. It's not like humans aren't already doing that. Except for this can powerfully swing it.
I was going to say, because you can still, I mean, you're writing a program, right? So you can implement biases in your program, right? No different than you can if you were to talk to another human being, that obviously we're all going to bring our predispositions and our biases to any conversation that we have. I would think that you can write code the exact same way, right?
Right.
So
better put it in airplane mode for like.
Yeah. That's
wild, isn't it?
That is pretty wild, man. Like that is pretty wild. Like if you have just a topic where you're just dealing in facts and data, like you're talking about with your daughter's school, I could see that being incredibly useful, especially if you're trying to learn complex information.
Like I wish I could go back and learn my calculus. I had this really high computer science. It was a computer science math class that went way over my head.
Yeah.
And every day in class, I'd be sitting here thinking, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
No clue.
Yeah.
If I could have had the internet and then him combined together and then put this into that and actually explain it to me again. Oh man, that would have been so helpful.
Isn't that interesting, right? So, I mean, I think back to the classes that I had in college, which, I mean, by the way, just to date us, like the internet was a new thing when we went to college, right? So
I was the first guy to use a computer on my campus, a personal computer on my campus. Those little Macs.
Yep.
Nobody knew about the lab. I was the first guy in there.
That's
telling everybody, you guys should use this. It's so easy.
Yeah. And meanwhile, now look where we are today. We carry around computers with us, you know.
Oh, and my roommates made fun of me saying, "You're an idiot. Why do you think everybody will want that?"
Yeah. I know it's amazing how quickly it's changed, but it's interesting too because I go back to college and think about that, like kind of using your example, and you take an economics class, right? And you could literally take, where you've got conflicting viewpoints, right?
Right.
So you've got like say somebody that's more of an Austrian school of economics, like a free market purist, and then you've got somebody that's more Keynesian, which thinks that the government and their involvement in larger, broader economic policies is really ultimately the better solution. And then you can take that lecture and you could almost create like an opposing viewpoint, right?
Apparently, it's what it does.
Yeah, which I mean that would be super interesting to hear,
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
And if that's where we are today, that's.
Well, I think I think like that's the thing, right? So the origin of it is at least initially, I would say, well intended, right? So because going back to that example, like you could take two conflicting viewpoints and position them equally on both sides, but then depending on, again, going back to those biases, like you can mask something as unbiased, but subtly integrate biases in there to then trigger, because again, there's all that data too. Like there are keywords that prompt human emotion, and there are things that, you know what I mean? Like we all get it in our algorithm, right? You look at your Facebook feed or your Instagram reels or whatever it is, like, you look at something once or twice and all of a sudden now I'm getting, like a bunch of supplements or vitamins or Dr. Barbara O'Neill because I'm trying to like not do things, or I'm trying to be more organic in what I'm eating. And it's interesting because, you almost will create the content that you're going to get based on your biases, or somebody else could create your content for you.
And just keep pushing you in a certain direction.
Slowly.
Yeah.
I mean, one degree at a time, know, where initially you don't realize how off course you are until, you're much further down that road and you realize like, wow, where am I?
Do you remember when Trump he was not the presidential candidate. He was running against like 25 other people.
Yeah.
And I remember hearing all the voices talk about him.
Yeah.
And I didn't have an opinion. I was like, oh, okay, he's running for president. Cool. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of guys running for president. I don't care really at this point. Yeah. But I remember where I was watching a video about him thinking, well, I definitely won't vote for that guy.
Yeah.
Just the little inputs.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, thank God we have that guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, again, like if you cease to implement context within anything, right? Which, we live on 30-second, 60-second sound bites. I mean, how many of those are we really watching? Which I think is why the interesting thing of to what you're doing, right? So a 2-3 hour conversation, the Joe Rogans of the world, the long form discussions, like where you're able to actually apply context to some of these things. You don't realize like how easy it is to manipulate somebody for 30 seconds or 60 seconds and then to create such a strong emotional response from people based on that soundbite, which, in some cases could be completely deceptive from what the initial intent was of that message. I think that's scary and fascinating all at the same time.
Because the oversimplification of complex things, like they really oversimplify things.
Oh yeah.
To make you think like, well, this is definitely the way to go. Like it's like a kid who plays chess. He goes, I'll just move here.
Yeah.
Killed.
Yeah.
But that seems to be the sound bites. They're just constantly saying, just make this move. It's really easy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is right. So like, you use the Trump example, right? Let's apply it to Trump. Like Trump is this extreme right wing. Like Trump's a centrist. He's a moderate.
He's actually a Democrat. Who became a Republican.
Right. and if you were to look at a lot of his policies, like he's more of a centrist thing, at least from an economic perspective, right?
Yeah.
Like he believes in big government, maybe not to the extent that the Democrats do, but certainly is not opposed to adding incentives or creating governmental involvement in certain markets, which I would say if you are looking at a true fiscal conservative, I would say they would be pretty opposed to that. Same thing with Elon Musk, right? I mean, he had heavy subsidies for a period of time from the government when he was, creating and launching the SpaceX thing, and certainly Tesla being in the auto industry. Like, there were a lot of benefits and incentives from the government that Tesla was a part of, and I mean, again, good for him. Like he got in line and understood the direction the government was going, and
actually made a product
and made a product made a product that has a market for itself and can now stand on its own. So I take nothing away from him in that, but I also I think we should be careful to call a lot of these guys right wing, economic purists, because they're absolutely not.
Yeah.
They're definitely not. I think the entire political spectrum has moved left. It's funny, and that's what my wife will repeatedly remind me of that too, and she's absolutely correct. Totally right.
So how was that ride? You guys have been on like 2 years in a row campaigning?
Yeah, it feels like it's pretty much been non-stop. So she got elected to city council in 22, and so it feels like, I mean, she says it was pretty much close to like 600 straight days of campaigning in some form or fashion or another, and to her credit, it probably was. Absolutely wild ride. Like, I think obviously disappointing with the outcome.
The first outcome, yes, good.
Yeah, the first outcome was great, right?
Yeah.
So getting elected to city council and being able to influence, I think really just being able to better understand and direct the hopeful future of Reading realizing its full potential is exciting. Honestly, it's really exciting. I think, and then in Tanessa's run for state assembly, and she'll tell you, like, that wasn't something that was on her vision board, so to speak. It's just those positions don't become open very often. And then looking at the collection of candidates, I think she just felt a deep responsibility to try to represent the North State with good representation, which I think you could make an argument that we haven't had that for quite some time. And so then she wanted to throw her hat in, and it was eye-opening, man. I mean, for me, like, I think for her,
what did you see that you had no idea before?
Man, I think just you hear about it, right? Like, you hear about the establishment, like you hear about the quote unquote, political power brokers.
Yeah.
And you just really understand how much that matters. And I think that was the thing for me that was eye-opening, because, listen, am I biased? Sure. But I will tell you, my wife was overwhelmingly the better candidate. Like, I mean, it wasn't even close. More articulate, more knowledgeable, had better experience. I mean, she actually worked in this legislature for 5 years versus her competitor who didn't, and just, and again, was just a better overall candidate in so many different competencies and so many different disciplines, and I mean, served on boards that are impact or that are managed and oversaw by the state, whereas again, her competitor really lacked a lot of that experience, and lack the ability to be able to really articulate a good understanding when they were on the same stage together in debates.
And people could see this.
And it was clear and apparent, if you wanted to, but I think what blew me away was just the fact that because the competitor had the establishment behind them, it had access to all the lobby monies, all the teacher union monies, all that, and what that money does. That money, especially when you're looking at an area that's as large as Assembly District 1 was, is that you need to.
When you say large,
talking like 20. I think, God, what is it? 25,000 square miles or something.
I mean, you have to drive 6 hours
crazy.
in one direction.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, you're going. Probably 4.5 hours to the southeasternmost point, and then if you go to the northernmost point, it's another probably 3.5, 4 hours from Reading. So I mean, you're going. I mean, it could theoretically be between 6 to 7 hours from one tip to the other, and so you need to spend money in order to have reach, and you need to have that money. And so I think just the ability to leverage the establishment for her.
How much money are you talking?
Fundraise. I mean,
what does it take to do that?
I mean, I think it would realistically, and again, Tess might correct me if I'm wrong, but I think realistically, I think the number was like $300,000. I think she really needed probably $300,000 in order to be able to access and have the reach that she ultimately would have wanted to have, that she felt like she would have needed to reach the voters in the timeliness and with the repetitiveness that she would want.
So to volunteer to serve the country, serve the state, serve our community, you need to be able to dish out $300,000 somehow.
Well, I would say in this one now. If you go, I mean,
but that's a little one,
right? And that's the thing is, so if you go to say Los Angeles, you're going to Orange County, or you're going somewhere else in the state, it's probably 10x that. I mean, it could be even more. I don't know. I mean, I'm obviously an ignorant party. It's not my world, but I just know it's exponentially more. This is probably as I would assume that there's probably less money spent in this more rural, expansive county than it is when you've got,
especially if you have more power and influence you could do in LA.
Yeah.
You have to spend a lot more to capture that influence.
I mean, I think you're probably competing, whether it be with more people, I don't know. But I mean, I think, honestly, man, I don't know. I will tell you, I think for me, what was eye-opening, that was eye-opening, certainly. And I think the other thing that really opened my eyes was just the amount of people in California that own their own business, that are heavily involved in the community, that are struggling in one form or fashion or another, whether it be, just too much governmental overreach, whether it's they're just struggling to pay their bills or to figure out how to keep government outside of how they're trying to make their living. But at the same time, these same people that are so frustrated are also so passionate about their communities, about their state. They love California. I mean, you're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 generation Californians, and these people are salt of the earth. Like, I can't tell you how many incredible people that we met along the way that just could not be more grateful for. You know? And I think that part of it for me was like, that's the hope, right? Like, Tanessa will tell you, like, she's unapologetically hopeful, and
Who's the business person you met that you like? I didn't know this person existed, and they're doing it. It's amazing what they do here.
Yeah, that is a really good question. I mean, I think for me, I was not able to obviously connect with nearly as many people as Tanessa did, but I know that, I mean, Tanessa was connected to some people that are opening pregnancy centers, down in I think Loomis and Grass Valley, and she got to be involved with some of them, and she would just come home and just be so excited about the things that she knows that they're doing, and that being a place that for her, when we lived in Southern California, she volunteered her time and did counseling at a pregnancy center, and just knowing the position that some of these women are in, and just knowing that, you know, what the desperation, the fear, the uncertainty, and just to know that there are people that are there that want to help them through that process, that want to support them, that want to sow into them, that I think, you know, for her, she got to be involved in and got to go to a lot of events that were for those. I think there were two in particular that she would just always come home talking about them, and I think just to see that people are out there doing just really incredible work. You know?
It's another one of those groups where the sound bites about them are so inaccurate, and they're talking about abortion and all this other stuff, and there's such a service that these people these pregnancy centers provide.
Yeah,
it's unreal.
Well, it's love, man. I mean, it's his kindness that leads to repentance, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you've got somebody that made a mistake. Like, what good do you think you're going to serve by rubbing that person's potential mistake? And they might not even look at it as a mistake. No, they're just in a difficult situation.
Yeah.
So like, do you really want to talk to them about how they made a poor choice, or do you just want to try to love them through the situation that they're struggling to navigate? You know what I mean? And I think just to see people's hearts through that is it's remarkable. You know what I mean? Like, just to not have an agenda. I mean, obviously the objective is that you want the women to keep the baby, not only for the baby, but honestly in most cases for themselves, you know, because the aftermath, you know, and the data supports it of, you know, after you terminate a pregnancy, if that's the decision that you make, like you create a whole host of other challenges that you're going to have to walk through. Some of them are physical, a lot of them are emotional. Obviously there's a spiritual component to it as well. And really just trying to help guide and coach these women through the best possible decision that they could make given a circumstance that was unplanned, but to love them into that better decision, I think is just, it's pretty remarkable.
I'm just amazed that these stories aren't overwhelming the my body, my choice people.
Yeah.
Because that one doesn't make any sense to me as far as like, well, you have a lot of choices, and nobody's saying you don't have any choices with your life or your body. But look at this amazing story that you could have.
Well, I feel like the my body, my choice thing is like, it's a gross oversimplification. And it's almost like a manipulation of the argument, right? Because if you look, like, for example, if you're my boss, right? And if I were to disagree with you, but I you know, at the end of our conversation, I curse you out. I tell you how stupid you are, and I just verbally berate you, right? Well, you're my boss. Like, I know that there are consequences to the actions that I just took in making that decision. Still my decision, but there are consequences to that, right? Like, the idea that anybody lays down with another person and doesn't understand the consequences of what could possibly happen if you did that, right? And to say that, well, my body, my choice doesn't start prior to your decision to lay down with that person, but only after that, right? It's like, that's kind of wild, man. Like, you got to do some serious mental gymnastics for you to be able to justify the fact that it wasn't your body, your choice before, but only after is it your body, your choice. Like, come on, man. Like, let's have an honest conversation about what this actually really is. Like, this is the fact that you don't want this. So like, let's be truthful. You know, I mean, I've lived in deception a good part of my life, and I'll tell you straight up, like, the first person that I lied to was me. You know, and then everybody else after that, but the first one, it's me. You know, so it's wild, because there are some amazing stories, man. Like, to your point, there are some amazing stories of people, you know, of kids at some point or another maybe weren't wanted from their mom or dad, or their mom, and then but they're here.
Last year when I was going through that book, Return of the Gods, really, I think there was a part in the book where it talked about how every nation has a flag, and every embassy will have its flag, and if you go into the Olympics, you carry your flag, and And this last season, we had a new flag that showed up everywhere and took dominion over the whole world.
Yeah.
The White House flew it. It flew over the Olympics. It flew over nations' capitals. Every nation's capital that the LGBTQ flag. And it talked about how this God has set itself up. It's not joking.
Yeah.
There's no joke. It's not joking about taking authority over us.
Yeah, I believe it, man. I mean, obviously we all see it, right? And I think this is the one thing where, for we as Christians, like we lose sight of, and I feel like the enemy will is willing to win an inch at a time, you know. And I feel like, I feel like in most cases too, a lot of times with us, like we want it all at once, right? So like, for example, go back and use the abortion conversation, right? We're like, we want no abortions ever. It's like, okay, great. I'm with you. We're all together in that. But like, let's maybe walk to get it out of the third trimester first, right? Like,
that's right.
You know what I mean? Like I'm all about the home run, like for sure. But sometimes you just got to get on base. Like if you want to score runs, like you just have to manufacture it first. And I feel like the Christian right is unwilling to take the small win because they want the big one. And I think the enemy is willing to slowly get there because they know they've got their goal fixed and they understand that we're not likely to get there in one swoop, but we believe that we can slowly and methodically move the collective to our way of thinking.
Right.
And I think it transcends a lot of different areas. You know, I mean, one of the things I look at, there's this website and it's called WTF happened in 1971, right? And .com. So, and what it is it shows it's a bit of a snapshot. All it has is graphs on it, but it shows all of these different things that happened in 1971 when America went off the gold standard, right?
Oh, okay.
And it talks about, and a lot of them are like social, like it'll talk about the income of African Americans and how leading up to 1971, you know, the graph was up and to the right consistently. And then after 1971, when you increase the money supply, then all of a sudden there becomes stagnation in the earning power of African Americans. It does the same thing for American males, same thing.
Wow.
You know, whereas you look at subsequently the American female after 1971, it begins to go up exponentially. And so you start looking at these things, social programs, right? So after 1971, you really start seeing a lot more of, you know, the government support of single mothers, right? So you start seeing a lot more legislation that's being passed after 1971 that facilitates that. And so you realize like, okay, we can create these government programs because we're no longer tied to a fixed monetary amount. We can really just kind of do whatever we want. And so we can start printing money, right? And so we do, and we start printing money.
Yeah.
And so over time, like if you look at the total degradation of the family, right? So like look at the origin of the feminist movement and when did that really start and when did it really start getting big and when did it start exploding? And so you can actually, and what's interesting about that website is it doesn't give a lot of context to it. It just shows you chart after chart after chart after chart. And so you got to kind of do your own homework. And so it's a good jump off point because I'm sure some of these data pieces are probably either lack or require additional context. But for the most part, I mean, you can see it in numeric form where what is happening. And I think at the same time, like once you start giving people money to, you know, once you don't need a man in the home anymore, right? Like once you marry the government, so to speak, and the government is your provider, then at that point, like you cease to need a whole household. And so all of a sudden it's a lot easier to maintain your quote unquote independence because you're no longer quote unquote, again, dependent on a man to live your best life or earn what have you. And again, so it's interesting. It's interesting to see the intersectionality of like all of these things and how
cause
they
and
play
effect
together. Dude, totally. 100%.
So much stuff that we're just ignoring.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, slavery played a role in history.
Sure.
But did it play all the role?
I don't know. I mean,
It-
listen. So we can get canceled on this.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'll tell you. Like the first people that, in most cases, sold black slaves were black slave owners.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's
not conspiracy. That's actually what happened.
it's historical fact, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And blacks weren't the only slaves. I mean, Irish were slaves when they first came here as immigrants. You know,
My grandparents basically were slaves in the Netherlands under a farmer. They actually escaped from the Netherlands and got to America. So this would be 1920.
Yeah. Yeah. So indentured servitude is something.
They were
that's-
white, by the way.
Yeah. They really?
They were.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that happened, right? So indentured servitude has been around pretty much since the beginning, right? The beginning of time. Obviously, it's biblically, like it's referenced in biblical times too, right? So, I mean, it's not new, and it's not specific to one particular demographic with a certain skin pigmentation. You know what I mean? Like there's just more to it. Again, it goes back to that whole context conversation where there's just, you can be manipulated into believing something. But if you were to go on the journey yourself of actually like doing the work and trying to understand what it actually is versus what it actually isn't, you probably open your mind up a little bit and you probably get a better understanding.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit trail
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I don't know
Careful.
where we go with
Careful,
that.
yeah.
But it does feel like it needs more context
100%.
of just because we had this conversation with our kids quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's funny how nuance of things you say
Yeah.
are. I heard somebody the other day say the N-word and totally got away with it.
Yeah.
And they were white.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, isn't it funny how if you have the right context and you put things in context, you can get away with it.
Yeah.
And we're losing context in a lot of things. But I thought, wow, how in the world did they pull that off in today's culture? But you can. We just have to have the right context for things.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it is. It's such an interesting time too, because again, I mean, you've got something, and I know it's either was preliminarily passed or is being talked about in the California legislature, but I mean, talking about reparations, right? And so you're like, at what point do people that never owned slaves, why are they responsible to compensate people that never were slaves? You know what I mean? Where
Where's the money come from?
Well, you and me and everybody else, right?
But it doesn't make it. The whole thing is so silly.
Dude.
You don't. If you could just handle, you have the 4th, 5th largest economy in the world. Start paying your own bills. Just catch up to your own bills first. Let's do that.
Yep.
You're stealing from us right now.
I'll tell you, man. I for what I do, I oversee 8 or 9 states, and I will tell you, it is coming back here. I mean, I just had this conversation with Tanessa a couple weeks ago. Like I was in Salt Lake City and came back from Utah, and just everything. I mean, just going out to dinner, and the cost of dinner is for a much better dinner than I'll get there than I might here in town, and it's a lot cheaper, and gas and hotel rooms and the entire, like everything,
Yeah.
I mean, I talk to clients and they talk about what it's required for them in order to operate and break even on any given month versus, clients we have here in town or clients I have here in the state of California or in other bordering states that might be, less quote unquote free than some others. And you're like, yeah, man, this is absolutely wild.
It's wild.
Yeah. And as it pertains specifically to California, I mean, I don't know what we are now. I think we're at I don't even know, like a $20 billion deficit or something to that effect, or pretty close.
One of the most powerful economic engines in the world. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make any sense. If you ran your company and you were in that percentage of debt or are behind constantly,
No.
you would be in trouble.
I mean, you wouldn't get money, right? So all your creditors would come calling.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what would happen. And I work for a bank, and that's really, in essence, what we do. I mean, we cease to lend when we see the leverage is too much. You know,
Right.
we just begin to we call our accounts to credit and we say, okay, listen, we're all done. Like, we don't see your sustainability long term, and we don't want to be here when you become insolvent.
Right.
So we want to be out first, and that's realistically what would happen. And so so when you go, because I think even in COVID times too, I mean, I believe that California at some point had a surplus. I mean, you know, and probably a lot of that was, you know, as a result of government funds
Federal.
or whatnot, right? Probably. But I mean, I think something to where we've had, like, you know, you go from like an $18 billion surplus, like an $18 billion deficit in a matter of a couple of years. I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
So now this is how I describe what you do. You do financing for automobile dealerships, and
Yep.
you help them also in their management.
So I work for a company called Cox Automotive, which owns probably 20 companies in the automotive space. We do floor planning for independent auto dealers, and so through that, we're lending them money, and so they can go out and secure inventory so they can sell on their lot. So usually I work for a bank that if you were to go to a car dealer's lot, in most cases, those cars, the car dealer itself doesn't own, but they leverage it. They borrow money from a bank so they can put those cars on their lot to sell to you, the consumer. And so what I do is underwrite and lend money to those dealers so they can have that inventory to sell to consumers, and then leverage a lot of the data and resources that we have on a market level to these clients to then help them try to obviously be successful, identify market trends, and position them to be able to ultimately and hopefully sell cars profitably. So then through that process, we help them engineer their own success, and at the same time protect our investment.
And so the better they do, the better you do.
100%. Yep.
So what keeps right now? What keeps an automobile company, auto sale company, from being all cash?
I mean, a lot of times, like, if you have the cash, it's great. I would say most don't have that level of cash. You know, say if you've got at an average purchase price of $20,000 a unit, if you get 100 cars in your lot, it's $2 million. You know,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a significant investment. And then secondarily, I think hopefully what really a lot has to do with just broader economic conditions too. You know, do you have a better place to invest
Put your money.
$2 million, right? You're going to pay us a decent amount in order to have access to our money. We're going to provide you with additional reporting and technology tools that will hopefully create efficiencies in your business. And so I think the benefit to using like a third-party floor plan company like ours is that hopefully you see some value in that. But the real benefit would be, I mean, a car's a depreciating asset. It's not, you know, so
Right.
you're real estate, right? So real estate over time will appreciate. You know, you may be in various stages of a business cycle, but over time, you know with certainty that
Right.
there will be an appreciation there,
Yep.
right? Well, with cars, I can tell you it's the inverse relationship. Like, with certainty, that car will devalue over time. And so why would you want to invest using that example I gave, that $2 million in something that you know is going to go down in value? Use our money and let us provide you reporting that also integrates with real market data that can help give you some insights to help you hopefully sell these cars faster, so that you minimize your downside risk, and subsequently, hopefully at the same time, you know, maximize your profitability along the way.
And do you also provide the financing for the buyer?
No, we do not.
Okay, so you don't touch that part.
Everything we do is business to business.
Okay.
No consumer. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's it looking like right now? With the economy the way it is, what's it look like? What's
Yeah,
your predictions?
It's an interesting time. I'm not smart enough to have predictions because I really don't know. I feel like it kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier. You know, those two different methods, like that I would say the Austrian economic model versus the Keynesian. I mean, we live in a very Keynesian model right now, which is there's a lot of government inputs into the market, and so it's really hard. You know, I mean, you look at it and you go, okay, man, there's so many inputs and so many data points that we're trying to create fiscal policy from, right? So I think the Fed meets today and tomorrow, like trying to decide whether they're going to drop another 25 basis points, which I think the betting market says they're going to. But really, like, what are they basing that data off of? Is it, I mean, largely it's consumer price and producer price index numbers, which are both inching higher. So, I mean, under that thought process, you would immediately kind of deduce and say, okay, it's probably not good for us to cut rates, because if those inputs and those costs are up, then the idea is that inflation is actually beginning to creep up, and so you typically don't want to cut rates in an inflationary environment. But then secondarily, you've got employment markets, right? And so, and every jobs report we get is that, hey, everything is great, everything is fantastic. Well, I mean, if you go back and you look at like an October jobs report where they created like 900,000 jobs. Well, 700-something thousand of those jobs were government jobs,
which will be fired here in a few months.
100%, right? So, and if you go to look back at the last 14 months of those job data reports, those numbers that come out, 12 of them they've been adjusted down. So you almost give the market a false shot in the arm, because the perception is that employment is better than what it is. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you adjust them back later, only to find that, it's difficult out there, Yeah. So I think right now, from an auto standpoint, you're starting to see incentives that are coming back to manufacturers.
I saw a 0% thing come through.
Yep. So you're seeing some like a Stellantis, which is your Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep. They're doing incredibly poorly right now. I think they either had their CEO step down or was fired. They're doing poorly, but they're doing zero interest financing right now. I think Nissan's struggling. They've got special interest financing right now, but you're even starting to see it on some models of your
Tesla.
Toyotas, Teslas, right? Yeah. So, and that's another one that's interesting. Like you talk about government intervention, right? So like for a period of time, you had a lot of those subsidies, and there's still federal subsidies going on for used Teslas right now, right? So if you were to go buy a used Tesla for under $25,000, there's a $4,000 federal rebate right now. Yeah. So, which is engineered to help kind of give a little bit of a bolus to the used market, because the last thing that you want to do if you're a used Tesla owner is watch Elon Musk cut new Tesla prices by 20 grand, right?
Yeah.
Because what does that do to the value of your car, right?
Yeah.
And so now all of a sudden you're left frustrating a lot of your existing Tesla owners, on top of the fact is that you're trying to create a market for used, not only today, but for tomorrow. And what does that look like? And so, so I think so in that sense, the good news is the money's getting cheaper.
Yeah.
But I think consequently, the challenges too is new car prices from pre-COVID to today are up 25%. The median cost of a new car is up.
It's going up.
Yeah, from 2019 to 2024, the median cost of a new car.
And that's without tariffs.
25%. That is without tariffs. Yes, correct. So you look at that, and that's your that is when there's no supply, right? And then everybody's walking around with a lot of money, right? Because we were giving out a bunch of free money, and then that's the subsequent consequence of that. People can't travel, right? They couldn't travel.
Yeah.
They couldn't go anywhere, and they had all this discretionary spending, and they were working from home, and they were just trying to figure out what was I going to spend all this extra money on, and honestly, it was cars, and it was good for the industry for a couple of years, but now we're on kind of the back end of it. And
it was not good for me, because that's when I had to buy my car.
Yeah, I believe it. I know. I know.
It was awful.
Yeah.
So speaking of tariffs, what are the auto dealers ramping up for, thinking about tariffs?
I think everybody's just kind of waiting to see what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know how viable the tariff is as a solution on the auto side. I think it's a great threat.
Yeah.
I really do.
Yeah.
I don't know if we have the wherewithal to actually follow through on the threat. So I think that will be interesting. But I think it's definitely a leverage play on Trump's part, and I think it's a good one, because I think it allows some of our other trade partners to come to the table and to visit some things that probably need to be visited. But yeah,
Hong Kong, China, they are already preparing.
Are they really?
Yeah, they're.
Well, yeah, and
I'm hearing from those people saying, "Yeah, we have to change. We're preparing for the worst right now."
Yeah. And that's interesting, right? So, because I mean, obviously, you look at a lot of the goods that we get. You know, your Amazons or how much stuff is made in China. So, that's pretty fascinating. I think that is different than Mexico or Canada. You know, I think when you look at Mexico and Canada, which is, I mean, like we've got some of in North America has some of its biggest auto assembly plants in Mexico, right? So yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out here, but I'd be interested to see what else do you hear from China? Like that part.
Oh, they know the trade ports like Hong Kong. I've never ever seen. So all you would normally see is a shop that was empty and being under construction. You would never see two shops next to each other, empty and having construction. You would never see a shop just empty, sitting quiet. I saw blocks of empty shops.
Really?
It was a ghost. It was not the whole thing, but
yeah.
Like if it was on the ground floor in Hong Kong and you're anywhere near walking, you would have shops in there. And I saw places like I was walking, going another one. That is wild to see so many empty, vacant, and dust collecting on the windows shops.
Yeah.
Because their shipping has dropped big time.
Yeah.
And then also there's political things going on between the leadership in all these places. I won't go into that, but
right.
That I'm more afraid of than America.
I know, right? I know, yeah.
Be careful there.
Yeah, I know, yeah. Well, when you talk about the wars and the threats of war and things of that nature, you know, not to get too biblical on it, but yeah, that's enough.
It is a wild time to think about what we're seeing in our lifetime.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we're in a hot war with Russia right now. I mean, it's a real war, and
we have no say. That's the wild part. We didn't get to say anything about that.
No, absolutely not.
Just it's done.
Yeah. The idea that Ukraine is fighting them with the warheads that we gave them.
Yeah, my taxes that I regretfully paid. Are now being turned into bombs.
100%. And not only bombs, but also Ukraine does not possess.
Well, I would say, and just free money.
Yes,
planes dropping money out.
Yeah, really. I mean, that's what it is. You know, it is, and it's not only the bombs, but it's also like the technology that's used because Ukraine does not possess the technology to fire these weapons. Right. So, but us in Great Britain do. So now us in Great Britain are giving them the technology required to fire these missiles, and you go, okay, like at what point do we just call a spade and go like, you know,
this is my brain. I'm thinking, was this a big setup between Russia and Ukraine so that Russia could just easily capture our technology, and Ukrainian spies go, you want to see the stuff we've been getting?
I mean,
and then they go, it's over, the war's over, but now they're united.
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, we literally left like what billions of dollars of cutting edge military technology in Afghanistan when we just up and left. Like, I mean, we just left it. Like that was the best decision that we could have made. Like literally, that was the advice that the administration got. It was more cost effective for us to leave it. Like you can't rationalize that. To me.
Yeah, I love America, but my eyes are wide open.
Yeah, 100%.
That's with anything.
Well, did you see that poll that I guess Trump just did, where it was like, I guess he put it on X. I briefly saw it. You know, disclaimer, it was on an Instagram reel, so it might not even be true. But I think what I saw was like, who do you consider our biggest enemy right now? You know, and it was, you know, I think it was like Russia was like 6%, China was like 17%, Iran was like 11%, and then it was like other, right? And then the other was like 55% or whatever the remaining is. You know?
That's us.
And in the other, it was like, you know, I mean, they're talking about like, okay, well, you know, Democrats, the enemy within, but then like there was a huge case for Israel because they were talking a lot about Israel, and they're talking about how like back in the 50s, like Israel fired at the USS Franklin or something. There was a warship, and there was this whole case that there was being made for that. And you go, wow, this is pretty crazy. And they were going on a deep dive down like how, like Netanyahu, like every time he's been in, like he's wanting wars with everybody in the Middle East. And listen, I'm not going to say it's right or I'm not going to say it's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's definitely there's a lot of viewpoints, and I think that there's a lot of questions. I certainly think to your point, when you say I'm eyes wide open, like I don't think anything is quite as it seems, nor as they want for us to think that it seems.
Right. COVID was the time where I had a lot of belief in America.
Yeah.
And I had my eyes wide open then, but now after COVID and just seeing it, wait, they actually had a machine that did something. That really shook me.
Yeah.
Like, and these conspiracy things are not, what's the word? They're just, agendas. They're not conspiracy agendas. They're agendas.
Yeah.
And we are just having to play to their agenda, and you can't question their agenda. They
definitely don't want you to. That's for sure.
Right. Hey, stop looking at what we're doing. Hey, because we did it now in broad daylight. Stop talking about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw that. God, I forget which one we saw. I know there's one on Netflix, but there's also one on Hulu. The one about the opioid epidemic.
I've heard about it.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, one of them, which is crazy. I think we watched the one on Hulu. It had Michael Keaton in it. It was great, but sickening at the same time, right? Because, I mean, you literally see like that Sackler family and how they knew. Like, they knew it was.
And they got...
Yeah, well, and they bought off the FDA, and they infiltrated the FDA, and then they were able to manipulate the FDA, and then got all of these drugs approved, knowing that they were harshly addictive, and and then a slap on the hands. I mean, literally a slap on the hands, and they still were able to maintain, their fortune. I think maintain the interest in their company. Like, I mean, just absolutely wild. And how is that any different from, Pfizer and what they're doing with this, fake vaccination, which now it's starting to come out too, that they knew there was no efficacy in this whole thing. And I think that's only going to continue to come out over time.
What's sad is now seeing friends who have been injured by it.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing about it. It's like, no, these are friends that actually were injured by it.
Yeah.
That's No,
man, I'm with you. Like I'm with you, and I listen. I work for a company where they required we got it, and I got it, and it was pretty early on, and I was, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, dude, like at all. Like, in fact, kids are mostly vaccinated, but now you see what's on the other end of it, and you're going like, man, do I regret that decision?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And I'm not gonna lie, it plays in the back of my head. Like, even when I work out real hard,
right,
and my heart rate's super high, right, and I'm going like, is this the smartest thing to do? Like, I'm not gonna lie, like I haven't worked out as hard since I got the vaccination as I did before, because and maybe that's unfounded, and maybe it's my own stuff, but like, it's in the back of my mind for sure,
Right.
It's like, is that something that's wise for me to do, especially when you see young, healthy people, find themselves in a compromised, position as a result of this vaccination. Like, it's scary, Well,
the medical world, I mean, really interested to see what RFK does. I mean, once again, eyes wide open.
Yep.
He was probably the opposite of what we would have cheered for before, and now we're cheering for him, which is great.
Yep.
Because he's making some big moves. One of the things, I was in a meeting last night where a bunch of medical people were trying to solve a pretty big medical problem. Mm-hmm. And when we boiled down, where's this problem coming from? It was the insurance companies.
Oh, yeah.
They're making the problem. And then it kind of got into that story of the CEO. I actually haven't followed that story at all. So I didn't know anything about...
Oh, the United Healthcare CEO?
Yeah, I didn't know anything about that.
Bro, wild.
But it makes you realize, wow, they do have a problem, and they have created issues, and we're feeling it right here. Like, we're in a third world health system in a lot of ways here in some of the stuff we're doing. Have you run into that with the campaigning?
I mean, I don't know if I have per se. I mean, I'm sure. I think, listen, I think one of the most shameful pieces of legislation that's been passed in the last 20 years is Obamacare. I mean, I think it was passed in the middle of the night.
Yep.
Nobody read it, right? And we experienced it. Our family experienced it because I left the corporate job, was working for myself, and then Obamacare kicked in. And at the time, like I was paying, I think we were paying like $500 or $600 a month, via Cobra or what have you. And then Obamacare kicked in, and then our healthcare costs immediately for a family of 5 skyrocketed to it would have been over $3,000 a month, and it was crazy. And that's the single thing that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like I was already kind of figuring out what my next thing was, anyways. But that was it, and that just drove me back to getting a job where I knew we could get benefits for the family, because that was astronomical. Like that was the forecast of what our monthly medical expenses potentially were going to be if I crossed over a certain income threshold. And at that point, it no longer made sense. And it's like, that's absolutely wild. But then you look at it across the board, and it's a lot of these providers that are just getting paid astronomical amounts of money from our government. And for what? Like, what's the quality of care that's being provided? Like, I think that's the other question. And I don't know if you've heard. It's funny you bring up RFK, like Casey and Callie Means.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, they're awesome, right? So, like, you look at what they're doing, and one of them was a lobbyist, and then the other one was a surgeon at Stanford, and then they both just kind of woke up at the same time or similar times, and just realized that it's the insurance companies and it's the lobbyists that are ultimately, those are the ones that are driving policy, which are ultimately keeping people sick. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, because there's no money in it for you as a doctor.
For people like I would say, the lobbyists are a problem, but who are gatekeepers who keep the lobbyists from being a problem?
Well, they should be the staff that's in, like, for example, if you've got like a state senator or a congressperson or whoever, it's their staff, because the actual electeds are busy. Like they've got a lot going on. They're sitting on all these different boards, and I mean, you think about it, like for example, in what I do, it's a niche. Like I am an expert in my field, but it's a niche field. We're asking these elected officials to be masters of everything. You know what I mean? I mean, I would sit home and I would watch Tanessa, and she spends the entire day going with a logger and is trying to understand the forest and all the challenges that go with that. And then on the next day, she's at a public transportation board meeting, and she's trying to understand all the legislation that's being pushed on local municipalities based on legislation passed in Sacramento. And so she's trying to understand transportation and all that goes into that. And then the next day, she's with, the fire chiefs or with the sheriffs, and she's riding around and trying to understand what's going on, in the jails or in the prisons, right? And so we have these elected officials that we literally expect to be experts in all of these different areas, which is impossible, right? And so then what do? Well, you defer to your staff, and you have to trust your staff. And in most cases, the lobbyists are going to the staff, and the staff are ultimately the ones that in many cases are either pushing their agenda, or at least are messaging what they want, what they specifically want that elected official to hear. I think so. I mean, that's my opinion. That's one person's opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think we're, to some degree or another, we're all, I'll speak for myself. Like, I am self-interested, right? So I would be lying if you didn't present me with an option that fed my self-interest.
Right.
And is that going to challenge my character? And am I going to bend to it? Like, if I don't have conviction and integrity, and I'm just trying to, climb the political ladder, or if I'm trying to get rich, or if I'm trying to do these things, then at the end of the day, like, why wouldn't I? And
Right.
I think if that's the moral compass of a lot of the people that are running around the Capitol, whether it be DC or Sacramento, then at the end of the day, that's what you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to get a bunch of people that lobbyists who are getting paid to identify the right people that can support legislation that's favorable to them, and then how do they properly incentivize them in order to further that agenda? And that's what's happening.
So after going through this election cycle, is your hope that we can reverse this thing higher or lower? More hope, less hope now? After seeing the guts of this, more of the guts.
Man, that's a good question. So, like, man,
because the more you talk, I'm thinking, ugh.
I'll say. So it's funny you say that, because I will say for me, like, I'm definitely more negative. Like, I'm definitely more, like, man, it seems really big. You talk to my wife, and she's so hopeful.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
She's so hopeful, because it's like, and there's wisdom in what she's saying. She's far more wise than I am. And she'll tell you, like, listen, it has to be exposed for it to be dealt with. And it's so true. Like, I know that in my own life. I know the Lord works things out with me every day as long as I let him. And and exposure is the precursor to you actually having the agency to do something about it. And so I think in that sense, like, there is hope. But man, the process is ugly. What is like, I think Bill Johnson says, like, we go from glory to glory, but it's hell in the hallways, like, you know, and I feel like that's kind of it. Like, I feel like the process of the exposure and the process of all of this stuff coming out is that, yeah, dude, it's kind of gnarly, you know? So.
Yeah. You follow what the guy in, is it Argentina?
So I don't follow him, but I've seen a couple of,
did you see
like,
Lex
his
Friedman
conferences and
interview?
stuff. No, I didn't see the Lex Friedman interview. Was it good?
It was really interesting. Back to AI.
Yeah.
They had the AI translate him,
Okay.
so it sounded like him.
Oh, really?
It was wild. It was like, I could see using that overseas. It would be so nice to be able to just have a conversation with people.
Oh, yeah. Well, as opposed to going through a third party or
A
intermediary,
person who's
or like,
yeah. And it sounded like him, and it was really amazing.
That's interesting.
But yeah, seeing where he has just said, all right, enough.
Yeah.
We can't do this anymore. We're killing ourselves.
Yeah.
And yeah, what he's accomplished in 1 year, I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's hope. That brings me hope. Like,
Yeah.
if we can come in with a chainsaw and actually deal with some of these problems.
Yeah. And I think there has to be an awareness and a recognition of the problem before it gets dealt with. And so
Yeah.
I feel like we're kind of in
that spot.
that part of the story, right? And then, yeah, and hopefully over the course of the next 4 years, like, or at least certainly the next 2 to 3, we are. I mean, we're able to kind of do some of those things that put us in a better, at least put our kids in a better situation, right?
Because
Like,
nationwide, looking at what Elon's been putting up these stats about the debt and everything, like, he's been yelling, we're in a crazy spot with this debt.
Yes.
Got to do something.
Yeah.
Now I'm excited because on a national level, we're going to be doing that. I'm hoping for the state level to follow.
Yeah, well, I think what's interesting there too is, I mean, again, a lot of what the money the state spends too is not only theirs, but it's the federal government too.
So how that will impact them.
So I think there will definitely be a trickle down. At least that's, you know, as my wife tries to educate me on how some of this stuff works, because I just immediately get hyperbolic and just say let's burn it down. I mean, I'm definitely like, you know, I'm more towards they say like the. It's funny. So she teaches Constitution, right? And so on one end, you know, it's the extreme left and the extreme right. So the extreme left is like complete government state, right? Whereas the extreme right is
libertarian
anarchy.
Yeah,
like it's even beyond. It's anarchy, right? I am definitely. I am way more towards the anarchy
I could never
side.
run for office because I would be that guy.
Yeah, I'm like just burn it all down, you know. But it is interesting because I do think that for the most part, like we're in a really unique time where we've got the ability to do some things, but to your point, we have to. Like if you
Yeah.
just look at the Federal Reserve's balance sheet back in 2008, where it was like, I forget what it was, like $1 trillion or something like that. But now it's 8 or 9 times higher than that. Like you can't go on this consistent spending spree or printing
Right.
money. When you look at Operation Twist and all these quantitative easings, and then QE 1, 2, 3, and then you roll that into COVID spending, and which is pretty much like a blank check, and you just inject over the course of the last 15 years all this money in our monetary supply, and you think that there's not some consequence that comes with that, and there is.
I've seen this in other countries where it's communist, and so they make a run up of real estate, and so they're buying it. The communists are buying the real estate.
Yep.
And then they sell it.
Yep.
And then they do this thing called they buy it and it's just run up, and they do a moratorium on sales. Guess what happens to the price of the real estate?
Freaking drops like a lead balloon.
Guess what they do?
Yeah.
They had a bunch of money over here. Buy back up again. And I've watched that happen in communist places where they have so much control.
Yeah.
And that's the part I'm realizing we have a lot of that going on. We have these levers that people are pulling.
Oh man.
And they're profiting off the system. And we've got to figure out how to get that stopped.
Well, aren't you seeing that now on I think we touched on it yesterday too when we were talking about like the on the mortgage side, right? Like Fed's cutting rates, but I don't know. I'm not seeing mortgage rates do anything dramatic.
No.
Like they're not going down.
And so we have several things that are happening that will not allow prices to come down. One is we don't have supply.
Right.
We have massive demand. Economics class, day one, we talked about the supply and demand curve. I wish there was a requirement that every politician had to take a test on how that works.
100%.
Because they don't understand it.
Yeah.
They keep, like, I heard Kamala talking about, we're going to stop the supply so we can decrease the demand. Okay, so we get this right. So we're going to, make bread production for Redding, California down to 1 loaf of bread a day, which will solve our bread problem.
Yep.
You don't make any sense, lady.
Well, it's that quote by Thomas Sowell, right? It's there's no solutions, there's only trade-offs, right? And so that's the thing is, listen, you could do that. It's just not going to get your intended outcome.
Right.
Right. You're just going to create a different problem.
Yeah.
So sorry. So go you're talking about the real estate. So there's no supply.
Don't have any supply. So
Okay.
our supply needs to go. Well, for one, we do have supply, but everybody has been trained now with these high prices, so they don't want to lower the price. So we don't. What I'm looking at is real supply.
Yeah.
So say right now, an average person can afford a $400,000 home. We might have some $800,000 homes nobody can afford. We might have some garbage homes which can't finance, and it's really just for investors. This sweet spot, what's our supply in the sweet spot where most people can afford? We don't have a lot of supply in that range, and you can't build in that. To build, you're up here.
Yeah.
So it's still not meeting the supply. The supply range is here.
Yeah.
And I don't see any way in California that we could have a major development that developed all properties in this supply sweet spot.
Right.
So, and everybody in this, so if your home it should be in this price point, people are pricing it up here, and it's their right to price it. I don't have any question about that. But how are we going to produce more supply? Well, foreclosures.
Yeah.
But we're not going to see those because we're really actually in pretty good shape, debt to equity right now. And if most people have their debt is so much lower than equity, like, okay, they'll sell it and lose a little bit.
But to your point, right, it's paper equity.
Right.
Like it's not real equity, because real equity is what's it worth. How do you create liquidity from it, right? So like you got to actually go sell it. So again, on paper, your house is worth $800,000.
But it wouldn't foreclose.
But it wouldn't foreclose,
Yeah,
right?
so you're not going to see a massive wave of foreclosures because they'll just sell them on the market.
Yeah.
And they'll have to come back to the supply range, demand range.
Right.
And if they get back into that demand range, okay, now we have another supply. But
So let me ask you this then. So then, do you think that foreclosures are actually healthy to the overall market conditions?
they'll be It's a way for the sick market to get healthy again.
Yeah.
But it's not fun. I went through 2008. That was awful.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I mean, the families that got kicked out of their houses, I had to walk up to doors and knock on the door and say, hey, I got $2,000 if you guys can move out in the next 30 days, and freak out. I actually carried mace with me because I didn't know how that would turn out. But you walk up to these homes, and these are real families with kids running around, and now I have to tell them, sorry, if you'll take this $2,000, you'll at least have that, but you have to leave.
Yeah. And these were renters from somebody else that owned a home, or the people that own the home?
They own the home.
So they own the home and knew they weren't making a payment.
Yep.
And now...
And some people said, well, we wondered when you guys were going to show up.
Yeah, right.
You heard that a few times. But then you had all this inventory, and so fascinating. The people who managed all this inventory, I swear they were college students who just got out of college. It was their first job. Mm-hmm. They didn't know what to do at all.
Yeah.
And they're asking me for help.
Yeah.
I end up, because I took care of them and really guided them through the process, I ended up having a huge inventory because I knew, like, oh, Jared will take care of us.
Right.
So they gave me a lot of inventory, but their bosses made it so hard on me. It was no fun. It actually almost killed me and took me out of the industry because I
really
hated that season.
I could imagine that.
Because they were just the bullies. They were like the Fannie Mae. Another government agency that just could bully you and tell you, you're going to take this for the commission, even though you can't break even that way. Yeah. That's what you're going to earn.
I'm telling you, man, like, banks are ruthless, and I work for one of them. So I'll tell you, like, it is when you are in that position, like, it's ones and zeros, man. I mean, it is just
and I understood.
Yeah.
You guys got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But it wasn't fun for anybody.
No.
So we don't want to go down that road. And I just, here's a question. Would it be better if we just said our national interest rate is going to be this number and it will not change?
Yeah. No. It'd be terrible. And I'll tell you why. Because at that point, your credit score
more water?
No, I'm good. Your credit score no longer matters. Your responsibility no longer matters. You think about all, like, it's when Trump talks about adding a fixed interest rate for credit cards. It's the worst thing you can do. Absolute worst thing you can do. Because again, now you're manipulating the market. Now you want more government intervention. Now
I'm just thinking about the Federal Reserve number.
Yeah, and I think, see, and again, I mean, yeah, the Federal Reserve is an entirely different conversation. Like, that is a rabbit hole that, like, I don't even know. Should we even have a Federal Reserve? That's a different question, right? So,
because it feels like that's the machine that keeps making messes.
Yeah.
And causing us all to clean up their mess.
Yes, it is. It is the government spending that aligns itself with the Federal Reserve. I mean, if you were to look back at the origin of where all of this money supply is coming from, it's government spending. Like, that's it. Because now you've got so much interference in what is, listen, we can call it a free market. It's not a free market.
No.
We have so much interference in the market that I don't know that a fixed interest rate helps anything. I mean, if you were to put the effective rate back down to zero, right? Okay, well, I mean, what is that going to do? Like hypotheticalize that scenario as it relates to home buying. Like, what would you see?
Well, the thing I don't like is interest rates go up, down, and this lever people are pulling that the lenders, you guys, don't even have any say over. The real estate owner doesn't have any say over. The agents don't have any. We get blamed for it, but we don't have any say over. The mortgage brokers. Nobody has a say over this, but this group over here is just moving the lever up and down, and buyers are and really, if it worked the way it should work, if they keep raising the rates, the price of real estate would go down.
Yeah.
But that's not what we saw this last time. So what other levers are they pulling? I'm just like, how many levers do we have out there? And we need to stop pulling all these levers because it's really messing everything up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, they're going to tell you that pulling these levers is going to impact the economy, and I'm not convinced it does. And I think that we're in the middle of a scenario playing out where it's actually, that theory is being dispelled, but before our eyes, right?
Yeah.
So we're saying, okay, we're gonna drive the economy, right? We're gonna lower.
We are gods.
That's really it. I mean, I mean, for a lack of better terms, like we will determine how this economy moves and goes, right? We will do it through the reporting tools that we leverage or we manipulate. I mean, you can go back and you can look at U6 versus U3 unemployment. One measures unemployment and underemployment, and one just measures people that are getting unemployment benefits. Those are two dramatically different things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right now we choose the lesser of those two inputs to evaluate the overall economic or the overall employment condition, which again, it's anemic, right? So you look at that, you look at these consumer price and producer price index numbers, and you try to explain them away. Like there are all of these inputs that they're trying to use to justify the decisions they're making, when in actuality the decisions they're making are not having an impact on the overall markets. Consumer confidence is as low as it's ever been. Credit card debt in the U.S. has just eclipsed $1 trillion for the first time ever. Like it's as high as it's ever been. And or maybe it's $1 billion. I think it's $1 billion. It's excessive. Like, and it's the interest rates at the credit card interest rate, I think, is a median of just shy of like 25%, 24 and change. So you look at the interest that these people are. Yeah. Listen, if you have interest card or you have credit card debt, you're struggling to make your payments or to pay your bills, and you have credit card debt at 24%, you will never get out of it.
Yeah,
you won't. You won't ever get out of it. You don't have to charge another thing. 24% is debilitating as an interest rate. Yet people don't realize that. Like, because to your point, I mean, you talk about political officials should have to understand basic economics. I agree with you, but like, why don't we teach it better in our schools?
No,
right?
that's not.
Like,
Well, I got a teaching degree, and my teaching degree was business.
You do?
And marketing.
Okay, all right. There we go.
And back, I was the.
Did you ever use it?
Well, I went through got the degree.
Okay.
Got out of college. Guess how many classes are offered in the nation? Almost none. I couldn't find a job for
where? For like high school?
High school, yeah. Teaching business and marketing. So it's not a class. So fortunately, real estate was a pretty good spot to go to. But yeah, they don't teach it. No. I mean, there are schools that do teach it, but it's like this extra class because they're very business-minded kids. But it's not a thing. Like, I went out looking for jobs, and it was like, there's no jobs for that. Like, why'd you get that degree? Yeah. You need to get a math degree, or you need to get an English degree, or something that we have jobs for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's.
I thought business was kind of a big deal in our country.
Yeah. Well, you would think that it is, right? Like, even if you were to talk about, and I was talking to my son last week, like I was just showing him, he's big into like basketball and football cards, right? And so we were talking about, and he started like buying and selling some, and so it's interesting. So it's very similar to stocks, or any investment, right? Yep. And so I was just kind of showing him, my our investment or our retirement portfolio and like what that would look like, and just walking him through like, hey, if they increase, if it increases by 10% for the next 20 years, like this is what this money today is going to be without me adding another dollar. And he's like, and it's blowing his mind. And I'm like, listen, this is called compound interest. Like, it's called like the ninth wonder of the world or whatever it is. And it really is, right?
Yeah.
And just watching like him go, wow, that's fascinating, right? And then to talk about like, okay, so when you get a job, I mean, he's only 14 now, but it's like when you get a job, it's like that's what you want to do is, man, you pay yourself first, right? The old Dave Ramsey thing, like whatever, pay off your debt and then pay yourself first, and just put that money aside, and then just let it build and work for you, and just understanding that. But again, like, he's in high school, like he's never been told that. Like my other kids that graduated high school, like she never heard that or experienced that. And
Yeah.
it's like, I would love for them to know that. And maybe honestly, and maybe that's my fault for expecting the schools to teach them, and that's my job as a dad, and I should be teaching them, you know?
Well, here's another thing is this thing's teaching him and taking a bunch of time away.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but I got caught off guard I was the guy who didn't want a TV in his house because I wanted to be able to have control over what my kids were taking. And when we were homeschooling, training them, then there was iPads that showed up. There was computers that showed up. And then there was phones that showed up. And I'm trying as hard as I can. Now we have a phone in every hand at home.
Oh.
And it's teaching them, telling them that some of this economic stuff is foolish.
It's crazy. Like, I mean, yeah, like first off, like who knows, right? Like who knows what they're getting on this,
right?
Because they have it with them all the time. And I'll tell you, obviously, I think we all probably have a love-hate relationship with it. Like love it from an efficiency standpoint. Like, we're able to, to leverage this technology to be so efficient, so effective, do so much more. Like it's great. Like I can work today from this phone, and how amazing. But at the same time, you're right. Like, we have like my youngest son. He's 14, about to turn 15. He's got a flip phone. He freaking hates us for it, And it's like because all of his friends have it. But I'm like, no way. Like, we don't.
That's just you made a great decision.
We don't want it, but we learn from mistakes because you know what I mean. Like we gave our oldest daughter a phone, and she wasn't quite ready for it, and so then we had to help walk her back from that. And we gave her a flip phone, and then she even self-admittedly was kind of like, well, no, I actually like the flip phone. Like after we were telling her, so I think we took it away from her at like 15. I think we gave it to her at 14 or 15 and then took it away about a year later. And then when it was time for her to get ready to go away to college, like 6 months ahead of time, we're like, hey, we want to this is probably a good thing for you to have now. You're a little bit more mature. Like we want to reintroduce this and help you manage it your last 6 months at home before you go off. And she was even resistant. She's like, I don't know that I want it. We're like, yeah, I
totally get it.
I get it. Like I get it, and it is. And it's a time vortex too, man. Like I find myself in moments going like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? Like where did I go? And then to your kids, like what do they have access to? And then I don't know, man. It's funny. Like it's funny you bring it up because I was thinking about something yesterday. Like I was doing a quiet time and just really like talking to the Lord, and I heard this thing a while ago from I've been listening to Derek Prince lately. Old sermon, you know what I mean?
I actually saw Derek Prince this morning. I was looking for the Lord's Prayer.
Dude, I love him. But something that it came up in my mind when I was in my quiet time, and it's like, laziness is wickedness. And I was like, wow, that's
real,
dude. It stuck. Like it still sticks. Like I've been just kind of like chewing on that all day because it's like, man, how often am I lazy? Like, cause at the end of the day, like there's a call in all of our lives. Like we've got to steward what we have, and how many times am I lazy in my relationship with him?
Yeah.
How much do I take for granted? How much do I take for granted? Or how lazy am I in my relationship with my wife by me not bringing up something that I feel like I need to bring up, either if I'm struggling with it or if it's bothering me? How lazy am I with my kids, thinking that like I'm going to have another time to be able to have this conversation?
Right.
And while we're all sitting there and, the TV's on, people are on their phones, and we're in the same proximity, but we're not together. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
And like honestly, man, like that's been probably the last 24 hours for me, just kind of sitting with that idea of just like, wow, man, is it? Because the other day, like the Lord, he's just been bringing some stuff up in me, and it's like this idea of righteousness and then sin. And if it's not righteousness, it is sin. Like there's it's not a gray area. And I think I know in my life, like I made a lot of gray areas, like obviously in and you know my story, but like not like being addicted to pornography, like not telling my wife, like that obviously ultimately led to us getting a divorce, and then getting remarried later when I wanted to begin embracing or tempting honesty in my life. And but the reality is like I made so many accommodations for me maybe not doing the same things that I had done in the past that led me down maybe a quote unquote more sinful trail, but like it wasn't righteousness, you know. And then instead of like celebrating or instead of the pursuit of righteousness, like I would be satisfied with progress. And
how did it look?
I would say it would look like, okay, I'm not, you know, for example, for me, if I was struggling with pornography, it's like, okay, I'm not going to look at pornography, but I'm going to fantasize. But like,
oh, right, yeah.
Right. But like, okay, so I'm not doing that, but I'm still fantasizing in my mind, I'm still not pure. Right.
Right.
But you can't prove that. And I'm going to somehow justify inside of me that I'm going to say, okay, well, I didn't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Check.
100%. Right. But it's not righteousness. And so any deviation from that straight line of righteousness is sin. And I think for me, like I've just wanted to explain away sin for a long time. And then in looking at that, and then at the same time, just what I recalled yesterday from just that Derek Prince thing, and then just kind of feeling that where it's like, yeah, that man, like laziness is wickedness. It's like, man, how lazy am I in certain areas of my life, in certain seasons, in relationships? Like, how much do I take for granted? You know, how much do I take for granted my wife? Like, my wife she's incredibly gracious, she's loving, she's kind, and do I take that for granted? You know, and do I not pursue her with the intentionality that I should? Am I not showing up as I should, as a husband who I'm called to, you know, die for her as Christ did for the church, and you know, and do those things. So, yeah, man. I mean, I think like this phone, this device is one of the biggest distractions I think that we have today, and honestly, man, I'm not sure how to totally manage it all the time, you know, especially when you've got, again, teenagers similar to you, and like, and how am I the example? Am I an example? You know, I mean, if I'm telling them not to do it, yet I'm sitting on the couch and I'm whatever, I'm checking email, I'm paying bills, I'm doing it, but like, what's the message that it sends, you know?
Yeah, this last year with that book, The Return of the Gods, just going back to the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah.
This thing has a little bite. I think that's no joke. I think that was just to mock us a little bit. The knowledge of good and evil, that we have access to all of it now.
Yep.
And then there was a whole series of thought processes I went through this last year of what is the attack on us? So there was an attack at that point to get us to bite to the knowledge of good and evil so that we become like God.
Yeah.
And look where we are today now. We're getting all this knowledge so that, I think as Google said, that they want to be AI to be the new God, or I might be saying that wrong, but somebody out there with AI was talking about how they basically feel like they're creating the new God.
Yeah.
Like we're trying again to be like God. But he didn't ever say, I want you to get knowledge of good and evil. He said, I want you to have wisdom. Fear me, and I will give you wisdom. And that's the part I feel like we have this unfair advantage right now over all that's going on, is we have the wisdom of God, which is the Battle of Midway. Do you ever follow that? Oh, the bottom. If you want to see how God intervened in World War II, you can listen to the secular stories of the Battle of Midway. It's wild. They're getting demolished. I think Japan had 4 battleships. We had maybe 2 battleships and Midway. So we had 3 spots to work from. They had 4. Our guys took off. They got lost. They knew that they did not have enough fuel to get back. And so they said, all right, we have a choice. We can go back now or keep going and hope we find them. And the squadron said, let's just keep going. And a guy happened to see through a hole in the clouds the trail of a boat. He said, I see a trail, like a little hole in the clouds where he saw the ripple of the boat. Turns out it was an aircraft carrier. One guy dropped 1 bomb and destroyed it.
Wow.
So like, that's not real.
Yeah.
And then he dropped another bomb and another one and destroyed that. Same guy.
Wow.
And they end up, I think they crippled one, and I think they were down to 1 aircraft carrier after that. But they had to bail out in the ocean because they had no fuel to get back.
That's crazy, man.
And we went from, and if they would have taken over Midway, we would have been decimated, and they would have taken all the Pacific Ocean. In 5 minutes, they had the wisdom to say, what should we do? Should we keep going or should we go back?
And logic, right? Logic or conventional wisdom would say, go back, right?
Yeah.
Like, unless you have that guy, a God moment or whatever that says, no, like we had this.
So, and I see, there were several stories in World War II or a lot like that. But that makes me think, okay, God, we have this unfair wisdom that it's better than AI. It's better than drones with machine guns and AI. Yeah. We've got this unfair advantage. Show me how to fear you. Yeah. Show me what that looks like. Yeah. Yeah. Because I know, like, I listen to everybody talk about our government situation. I know how it's hopeless in a lot of ways, but so was it Nahum at Esther's uncle? Esther's uncle was going to be killed on the gallows, and Esther goes into the king and talks to the king, and then the king goes, "Who told you? Who's going to do that?" And then put the guy that was going to kill the Jewish people on the gallows instead of the uncle. Yep. And I thought, we have that. That's our unfair advantage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is interesting, right? So but that requires the pursuit of him. I feel like for me, like busyness, like like busyness is a thing, and there's no shortage of things to do on any given day, and I feel like that's the phone is where I wind up doing a lot of them. But is that what's best? And can you am I creating enough space to allow the Lord to intervene and to dispel that wisdom, or am I creating space for him? Am I even asking for it some days, which admittedly I'm probably not, you know? I think that's I think for me, man, going back and just to be honest, that is the hardest part. There's 2 really hard parts to watching Tanessa not win, and the first is that she loves it. Like, and I think you see somebody.
And she's good.
And she's good at it.
Like I can say people are politicians. Yeah. She's not. She's a different beast.
Yeah, she is. So she loves it and she's good at it. And so you look at that and you go, Lord, I don't understand your purpose here. Like how do you create somebody who is so good at this and loves it so much, yet not and this not be the next step, and then that part of it's hard, and as her husband, like watching her come alive doing it, like that is just probably that's equally hard. But then the most difficult part is knowing how much we need righteousness in that area.
Yep.
And just I know the fact that she's unwavering in her trust in the Lord and her beliefs, and she won't compromise. Like, I just know that's who she is. I've known her for majority of my life, and I have seen her repeatedly have every opportunity to do something outside of the Lord, and she yet repeatedly, in spite of painful situations, always comes back and says, all right, Lord, no, I know that your way is the best way. And to watch her do it and to say, okay, like, obviously, and even as we've been talking, like, there's such a need for righteousness in that arena right now.
Right.
And to have somebody who has the skill and has the aptitude and has the heart and has the desire and the love for people and the integrity to do it, and then for that to not be the next progression of like what she's supposed to do is, I mean, again, his ways are higher than our ways, and I mean, I know all the know all the verses to support maybe why it didn't happen, but at the end of the day, you're like, all right, Lord, like,
it's gotta hurt.
I don't know what you're doing, man. Like,
yeah,
I don't understand.
Did you battle like some depression or anything after? Because I know after I recently went through that trip and all the emotion of seeing these kids and all this stuff, and I actually got back and my friend reminded me how you just did a kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stories in the Bible where these prophets came back and kind of got depressed a little bit, even though they had this big win. And I know one time I helped a guy run for Congress, and it looked like we were going to win. And the lady who won, she says, if you had 2 more weeks, you're going to beat me.
Yeah. And
that kind of like letdown afterwards was heavy.
Yeah.
Do you guys run into that at all?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Like, I think that's natural, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that definitely exists for both of us to different degrees, you know, for sure. But I will tell you, man, I think that's the one thing that's pretty remarkable about Tennessee is that she is able to just her trust is in the Lord. Like, it's not in her vocation. It's not in what she does. Like, she knows that she's going to be okay. Like, and I also don't think for her, like, yeah, it's something to do. She loves it, but it's not like for her being elected is not the end all be all for her. Right. You know what I mean? And like, which I think, again, it's just another reason why that's somebody that we would want in that office. You know what I mean? Where it's like, you don't have to be there. You're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because you love it and you want to affect change and you have a value for good governance and you want to represent that to people and you want to help pull other good people into a system that is clearly broken. And the only way it's going to be fixed is by other good people stepping into it, you know? And I think for her, that's her real heart, is to be like, it's not one person that's going to solve it. It's going to be a movement. And if it's just a lot easier to influence and impact that movement if you're inside of it.
So she didn't run for governor is what you're saying?
I mean, dude, I have no idea what is next or what the Lord's working on. I don't know. You know, I don't know. But going back to your question, I mean, I think there's definite disappointment. I mean, for sure.
Has to be.
Yeah. And I think also, like, when you charge as hard as she did for as long as she did, and then all of a sudden, like, there's just a vacuum, right? Like,
right.
I mean, it was.
And now what?
It was every day.
Yeah.
There's something going on. There's, you know, I mean, especially the last couple months, like the last 90 days, 120 days, like, I mean, she was in the car, like she was driving. I mean, we're probably doing oil changes on her car, like, you know, every couple weeks, like, just because it was go, you know, and now there's just like it's not, you know, so there's that vacuum of like, okay. And I think in some of those moments, it's just obviously apparent. And she's still on city council. Like, she still is very involved in what's going on here and obviously in Reading. And yeah, I mean, and honestly, like, I think that's probably the other remarkable thing is even when she was running, like, she was the mayor, like, she didn't step back from her responsibilities here for 1 second. Like,
I know, she's Superwoman.
Yeah.
She's
quite remarkable, man.
She's
like,
not, I was shocked that she lost, actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine it if people knew who she was. Like, how are you not going to vote for this woman?
Yeah, and that's the thing, man. I think you've got a lot of people that have these presuppositions of what they think she is or isn't. It's weird, man. Reading's a weird place, for for such a small town. There's so many different factions and contingencies, of people that are here that just have these, very, very strong viewpoints.
Yeah.
I would say like and they're very confident in them. The intersection of ignorance and arrogance is a very dangerous place to live, and I think that there's some of that here, and I'm sure there's some of that everywhere. So, but yeah, I mean, she's amazing. Like, obviously, and again, I'm as biased as they come, but I'll tell you, if I could handpick a representative to
exactly,
I would want her. So
exactly. I have to use the bathroom real quick. Do you want to take a break?
Yeah.
Speaking of disappointment, it just hit me. I remember a couple times I felt disappointment. One of them was, and it was weird because I didn't have ownership in it. I didn't really care that much. Mm-hmm. But the disappointment, and you were on the opposite side of it.
Okay.
Super Bowl, Seahawks versus Patriots.
Let's go, yeah.
And that 1 yard line.
How Pete Carroll doesn't hand off that ball to Marshawn Lynch is, we're all still befuddled by it.
But what's funny, shouldn't take a bite. I didn't really care that much. I mean, it did. It's just a pro football game.
Right.
I don't own them.
Right.
It's not my team.
Right.
I was living in Cleveland at the time.
Okay.
And just as the feeling the next day was like someone broke into my house and stole something.
Yeah. I did. His name was Malcolm Butler. And, yeah. And he did. Yeah. Yes, that is, yeah, like I remember where I was. Like I had just been hired at the company I work for. We were at an event in Orlando. We rented out like a bowling alley. Like it was one of those like Lucky Strike type deals. So like bowling and sports bar, the whole thing. And so literally I'm with a bunch, like 200 people that, most of which I don't even know. I'm just watching it and I'm like, and I find the guys from Boston, like I go over and migrate and hang out with them, and just watch it. And like, we were just like, we were done. We're like, this is crazy. Like
that catch,
we're gonna lose.
Jerome Curse, the catch he has at the end.
Oh yeah. Oh, crazy.
This is over.
Crazy. Like, yeah, that's right. You totally forget about that. Like, what a remarkable catch. Like, he had no business catching that ball, and he catches it. And then at that point too, you're like, oh man. Like being a Boston sports fan, again, man, like we've been on the Bill Buckner ball, like we've been on the receiving end of a few, like so I know I know what a letdown feels like, so we just thought it was over, and then they didn't hand Marshawn Lynch the ball.
And Josiah just crumpled on the floor and bawled.
How old was he at the time?
I think he would have been.
That was 10 years ago, almost 11.
Yeah, so he'd be 11. He'd be 10 or 11.
Yeah. Wow.
But that heartbreak of, no! And the weird part was like, I know this is a game, and whatever, it's just pro football team. But it left this empty feeling for the next day of someone just stole something out of my house.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, it's funny, man. Disappointment. I have.
Oh, that picture of Tom Brady on the sideline before that.
Oh yeah.
That dejection, like.
Yep. Totally despondent, like just done, and yeah, it's crazy, man. Like I love sports. Like obviously, like growing up, I love it. But I'll tell you, man, I have never been so invested as just like obviously watching, which I think hopefully that's healthy, but watching my wife go through it and then just watching that the results not come in like we had expected it to, and similar to you. Whereas for me, like I was with her, like I would like I would go to events whenever I could and just watch her next to her competitor and go, dude, this is a laydown. Like, this is not even like, this is, I mean, it's not even a competition. Like, it certainly shouldn't be. And then to see her be on the losing end of it, and for it to be not quite as close as we certainly would have expected. And you're like, wow, dude, this is wild. Like, just wild. So yeah, I mean, and there was a lot of disappointment there, but such is life, man.
So how are you guys recovering from it? How are you guys battling through it?
I feel like she's doing it better than I am, to be honest with you.
How is she doing it?
You know, I don't know, man. I'm good. I'm always hesitant to speak for her because I think she's probably doing a lot better than I even think, and honestly, I probably don't ask her enough how she's doing with it all. What she uses is she's like it's this weird juxtaposition of like she's like she's really excited her team won, like obviously Trump got elected, Republicans of the House and the Senate, and there were some seats flipped. There were some people that she worked very closely with within the state that got elected that she was hoping that she was going to be able to go down and work with them and legislate with them. And now,
how did the numbers turn this year? Was it more red than?
Yeah, more red in the state. I just saw a statistic yesterday where it just talked about like some of these counties, and I don't know exactly how they derived the vote, and it might have been just presidential, but just a lot of places that were maybe already slightly red have gotten more red in California.
Yeah.
And so, but I don't know how like the state assembly and the state senate played out with regards to like.
So now instead of 10 to 100, it's 11 to 100.
Yeah, or maybe 12. Yeah, but then but what Tanessa says, she's like, I feel like my team won, but I played bad. Like that, because she played volleyball in college. Like she's competitive. You know what I mean? And you know that feeling where it's like, yeah, I'm so excited my team won, but like she feels like she didn't like quote unquote pull her weight, for lack of better terms, and I don't think that's the case at all. But like I understand, like for playing sports, like I understand that thought process, that mentality, And I think for her, she's just disappointed that she can't be in the middle of it, like because again, she's good at it. So. And she was heavily invested, so I think it's just kind of managing through the what's next season. I think she's got some things that kind of the Lord's speaking to her about, and she's trying to figure out like how she moves next. Like clearly there's purpose in this season, and so then just trying to get connected with the Lord and figuring out like what that purpose is. Like that's the thing. Like to know my wife is to know that she doesn't half-ass anything.
Right.
And yeah, so like I think for her, she's just in pursuit of like what he's on for this next season of her life, and she's just trying to stay present in it. There's no plans for like what's next. There's none of that right now. It's just kind of politically, like she's being very intentional, I think, with what the Lord wants her to do, but she's just trying to steward this place that she's in today. And
if she could do the election all over again, how would she do it different?
Man, I think she would have gone harder after Doug LaMalfa's endorsement earlier, because he endorsed her, and so did Tom McClintock. So the two Congress people that covered this district both supported her. And so, but I think Doug's endorsement earlier would have carried more weight. I think it would have probably ingratiated her to more donors which would have then allowed her to be able to do the mailers that she needed to do, because the demographic is disproportionately over 60, and the way that you reach those people is not through social media. It's not. It's through mailers. Mailers are expensive, right? And so. it's, we live in a part of the state where it's not expensive to run TV, or it's not expensive to run radio. But what it is expensive is to do mail, because of the geography you're having to navigate. And it also is where you connect with the majority of your voters.
Right.
So that I think would have made the biggest difference. So I think if hindsight were to 2020 and she were to go back and look at it, from her, in her words, she thinks that would have been something she probably would have gone after harder sooner.
Well, you look at how Trump, when he lost the second election, I had this gut feeling that this was the best thing for us as a people.
Yeah.
And the thought that hit me was, now we know the reality. We know what's going on.
Well, it's like, and yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because just yesterday, so Governor Newsom was in Reading, right?
Really?
Oh yeah, he was in Reading. Yeah, he was out of Shasta College, and he's speaking to his education people and all that, and who was standing right behind him with a big smile on her face was, our new assembly person Heather Hadwick, and it's like, just understand, like that's what you voted for. Like,
yeah.
I mean, that is like, you might have a Republican next to your name, but at the end of the day, like, your beliefs and your values and where you got your money from is going to, over time, prove itself out.
Right.
And so,
when's the re-election for that position?
it's every 2 years, man.
Oh,
It's every
that's
2
a
years.
tough
It's every
one.
2 years. So you're pretty much always running,
Right.
The problem is, again, it's the establishment. So once you're an incumbent, like, it's just,
Yeah.
it's a lot. It's easier, unless you do something real stupid. So,
Right.
So who knows? But again, yeah, who knows what's next? You
Wow.
know? But what about you, man? What is next for you? You've got clearly a lot going on. I'm in your office, and you and I have obviously talked about some of the incredible work you're doing with the trafficking thing. You've got Dream Builder games. You're rescuing kids. You're like, you're giving yourself to a lot of different things. Like, what do you see as what's next for JR?
Well, we share there's a common thing of having superpower wives.
Yeah. Yes.
So my wife is the founder of Rescue Kids International, and actually kind of get teared up just thinking about it. Like, this is my way to just show her how much I love her.
Yeah.
Is like, obviously we love the kids.
Right.
Obviously what we do with the kids is amazing, but to like champion my wife and to see her in her element where she's like she's awesome here.
Yeah.
With kids and
Yeah.
with everything we do here. But when you're with her and she's in the places where these kids are at, or we have these events, and she's just different.
Yeah.
Comes like rises up to a different level. So seeing that for her, like one of the reasons we moved to Reading, I saw her come alive here. Because when we were in Seattle, it was great. It was a good time raising our kids, homeschool and everything. But moving here and seeing the culture of people dreaming here and people like really going for it, was really, I saw her come alive.
Yeah.
Well, taking her and getting her back into, because with COVID and all the political things, we had to really stop what we were doing over into other countries. But now getting to go back with her again and seeing her come alive is so exciting.
Yeah.
But then to see these kids, like, sex trafficking is a big problem.
Huge.
You hear about it on TV, you see the ads, you hear about the movies, but you don't really have any grid for it at all. Did I tell you the duck hunting story? Okay, so what it reminds me of is duck hunting. And duck hunting, you can have, I've had this happen, where you have literally so many ducks, the sky turns black.
Yeah.
And it turns dark because there's just so many ducks flying over. Well, this one time they're flying over, I'm like, bang, 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 just shot 3, just hoping to get one. Nothing. In a black sky of ducks, nothing. And I'm like, what? And my friend goes, you got to aim. You got to aim for the duck. No different than if you just saw one.
Right.
And if I see one, I'll get it.
Yeah.
But this massive number of ducks, just randomly shooting, you'll miss. And all my friends got 3. I got none in this cloud of ducks. Well, the sex trafficking thing is a lot like that. Everybody's overwhelmed by the massive problem of it.
Yeah.
It's enormous, and it's everywhere. It's here. It's on the border of. It's in Canada. It's everywhere.
Everywhere.
Well, the place we went to, I pulled it up on my phone, and they've changed it. Actually, I don't know if because I mentioned it, and I've been showing people, but when you go to Google Maps and you type it in, it said this town is famous for its illegal gem trade and sex trafficking.
Wow.
That was the description of the town. They've since changed it in the last week.
Wow.
But I thought, oh, well, that's where we're going. Are we safe? Is this a safe place? Well, when we got there, I didn't know really what we're going to do. But they took us into the dump, and you see all these kids in the dump, and you're thinking, this is. I thought I had a bad childhood.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Turns out I had pretty good.
Yeah.
This place is rough. They're building their homes with the garbage, but then you meet these kids, and they're just kids. They're just playful kids, and they would love to go to school, but they can't because they don't speak Thai. Because they're Civil War refugees from Myanmar.
Okay.
And so you see all these families that have escaped, and the only place that is welcoming them is this dump. And our friends there have a community training center which goes in there and teaches them Thai so they can go to the local schools. Yeah. And so now we have this gateway to help these real kids. But if we don't do that, here's the part that scared me. If we don't do that, these people from around the world have found out about these kids, because even on the maps it says the center, it's a heavily sex trafficking location. So these kids will be invited to a business or an opportunity, and it's never what they say it is. It's usually sex trafficking. The parents will get a subscription like Netflix money. So they'll get money for food and everything. And the kids will be in trafficking. They'll make some money, and it's better than going to school. Yeah. It's better than hard work. It's better. So they get trapped into the sex trafficking. So what our friends have figured out is if we can get them into this process, we can keep them safe. So having 70 kids, you can see, I could see their eyes. I can see who they are. And now they're real people. It's like that duck hunting where now I can focus on this, and I see the problem and I see the solution. I want to do everything I can. So now our business is overall just trying to finance the overhead for everything, because I want my friends to be able to give to these kids specifically. Yeah. Build relationship with the online portal and everything with these kids. I mean, I hate this stuff, but I love this stuff.
Yeah, 100%. Right.
And it allows my friends to have a connection with a Civil War refugee on the border of Myanmar and Thailand, be able to build a relationship, even go visit them. And their $60 a month goes straight to that kid without any admin stuff.
Wow. It's
just cared for. And then our business, our sales here will help cover the admin so that can happen.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
And then last week, I was struggling last week. It broke off Friday. But the last week, it was so heavy, and the urgency was so heavy, it was almost like I couldn't do anything. It's just too urgent.
Yeah.
Almost like, imagine one of your kids gets kidnapped. You're not going to work.
Yeah.
And that's kind of feeling I had, like, this is too important. I just can't keep doing work as normal.
Right. Wow.
So that's kind of the urgency of it.
It's amazing.
It's exciting. It's there's an anger to it. There's a violence to it. There's all this stuff to it. But there's this companionship with friends. Like, hey, come, let's rescue a kid.
Yeah.
Together. Let's make this happen.
Yeah. That's amazing. Like, I mean, I think it's incredible. I do think that I don't think any of us quite fully understand, unless you're connected to it, like how big of a problem this is in the world today. You know, I've got a buddy of mine that I think.
We need to meet them.
Yeah, he's the president of the U.S. Institute of Anti-Human Trafficking.
Yes,
and He is. So he like I've been connected with him, and we've been friends for probably 15 years or so now, and he'll just periodically share some stuff and some things that he's seeing. But it's like, I mean, again, it's all over the world, right? And
Everywhere.
And I mean, and he'll share some wild stuff. Like, I mean, he's they produce videos of like how the Super Bowl, what the Super Bowl drives from a demand standpoint, right? And he'll talk about it's not just girls, it's boys. He's like, in fact, a lot of it is boys. Like, you don't realize like how much there is of an appetite for young men. Like, and I think just naturally, a lot of us think that it's women or it's young girls, and it's boys too. And it's just crazy, man. Like, it's absolutely insane. Like just the need to do exactly what you and Anita are doing, which is amazing.
So it's the ancient war all over again. It's so you go to Genesis 6 and these Nephilim try to destroy us. You got demons that try to destroy us. There's something that wants to kill, steal, and destroy us, keep us enslaved. And so when we rescue these kids, a lot of I asked myself when I first started this back in '98. We were rescuing these kids, and I kind of asked, like, well, now what? But we've rescued them. Okay, we make better terrorists, more intelligent terrorists. Back then, that was terrorism.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, we can't just make people more educated. It has to be better than that. And then that's where the Dream Builder games came out of. We need to rescue these kids, but then we need to teach them to hear God's voice. Really hear God's voice. And the Lord's Prayer says, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as is in heaven. Ask these kids, okay, find out what God wants to do on earth. Tanessa needs to be in leadership of our society. You helping car companies go through these periods of time.
Sure.
Me helping clients process one of the biggest investments of their life.
Yep.
These kids came up with genius ideas.
Really?
And one of the kids, I said, all right, actually the whole group, I said, what is this? And I pulled out basically the equivalent of like 10 cents. What is this? And they go, oh, it's 10 cents. I said, no, what is this? They go, it's 10 cents. I said, no, what is, I just kept going. Finally, one kid goes, oh, it's an egg. I'm like, okay, how'd you come up with that? Well, I could go across the street and buy an egg. Okay. Close. That's good, but that's not it. And they are talking. And then finally one kid goes, actually, it's 2 eggs. Well, how'd you do that? Well, I buy the egg. I go sell the egg for twice what I paid for it and go buy 2 more eggs. I said, you're getting closer. And then one kid out of the blue goes, it's worth whatever I think it is. I think, exactly. Now, everybody gets 10 cents and had them all go out and see what they could do with 10 cents. Said, how you do it is ask God, what's the need that needs to be met here with this 10 cents? What can I do? And they all came back the next day. Some of them came back with 20 cents, $1. One kid came back with $50.
Did he really?
Yeah. I was like, okay, what'd you do? He goes, well, I just realized we have all these people that are foreigners in our building, and they don't speak Chinese. And they would like to go get snacks and things, but they're afraid to go out because they don't speak Chinese. So what I did is I made a menu for them all. And I just added a little bit extra to the menu for going out to deliver it and bring it back. And I made $50.
That's amazing. It's amazing, dude.
But like, and the theme is, how do you make the world a better place and help those who can't help themselves? And if you can figure out how to hear from God, how to make the world a better place, and help those that can't help themselves, you've solved some major problems.
Yeah.
And people will reward you for that.
Yeah.
So the Dream Builder Games was birthed out of that. And so now with these 70 children on the refugee children, is now our first step is we need to get them in school and get them in the community center and trained and have the resources to do that. Second is once they're in that, we want to teach them to dream with God. So in the previous place we're at, we had kids go on, like all of them went on to do amazing things. They all graduated from college, of the first 70, 66 of them got additional degrees. The other 4 didn't do too well. One became a lawyer, one became a research scientist, one became a journalist, and one became a nurse. So they, not so good. But the other ones, they did good.
That's incredible, man.
And so having these kids learn how to dream with God, and it was really amazing. We had 2 of them come down and join us when we were in Thailand. And I said, all right, why don't you share with these kids some of the things of your life? And the first thing they shared was the Dream Builder games.
Really?
Because they said, once you get connected to God, and once you have you have these people here, they're going to connect you to the world.
Yeah.
You have God and these people here, and you need to hear from God. And they start explaining it to these kids. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So that is the big secret sauce of what we do. One is I want to highlight people who are doing the work. Mm-hmm. And then I want to highlight them and connect them to the outside world and say, hey, help these people. Yeah. Help these kids.
Right.
And then we want to come along and go, all right, let's dream with God.
That's remarkable, dude.
And so the Dream Builder Games we'll be doing up in Alaska for that first weekend in February. We'll do one here. I want to do one here for a weekend. And Hong Kong and Thailand. And I think that's it for right now. That's what we've got on the schedule. From there, imagine you have people in all these locations. Now they actually are working together, and they find out about one of these children that's come up with a pretty ingenious dream. Guess what they can do? Partner with that kid.
Yeah.
And we just opened the whole world up. God to open up this dream that was trapped in this little kid.
That's awesome, dude.
So that is what
That's cool.
I have to be careful because I sometimes just get too excited about it that I can't explain it.
I think you explained it well. I think you explained it real well.
I feel like, how do I explain this better?
No.
Because it is so exciting.
Yeah. Well, it makes a difference, man. I think that's the beauty of it, right? Is like you're not only, to your point, right? Like you're saving kids from something that's way worse than just poverty alone, right?
Yeah.
But then you're also beginning to help not only restore them, but help them come into like what is actually possible.
Right.
And giving them tools and resources and making that be practical because I think it's remarkable, dude. So.
And the other side to it is it gives us a way to do something.
Yeah.
Because it is almost like looking at porn when you see kids and you can't do anything to help them.
Yeah.
It's just this frustrating, like, I see the problem.
Yeah.
But it does make me more frustrated because who do I go? Where do I go?
Yeah.
What organization actually does use the money well?
Yeah.
Which kids are actually taking it and running with it? Because I'll tell you, we've traveled to a lot of different places in the last few years trying to find the second location we were going to work in. And this one was my wife out of nowhere comes up like, we're going to this really remote village on the border of Myanmar and Thailand that nobody wants to go to. And okay, well, let's see it. But now that I know, that kid, there's thousands of them actually. So I forgot what the numbers are, maybe 10,000 refugees have come across. And there's like several thousand children that need someone to like get them out of the, because if you don't speak Thai, someone's going to come along and go, hey, I got this cheap way to make money.
Yeah.
Or great way to make money.
That's insane.
Crazy. So in that area, so Thailand has 1% Christianity. So it's a really small percentage. In this little town of 100,000 people, there's 100 Christian churches. And I met a bunch of them. And these people are for real. They're actually housing kids in their home. One house we went to, they had 10 kids.
Wow.
And they're building their own structures. And
that's crazy.
Like they're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Themselves without money. Like they don't have money.
So that's the population of the town that you're going to. There's 100,000.
100,000. And there's like 10,000 Burmese Myanmar
Yeah.
refugees across the border from the Civil War.
How did Anita find that town? Like how?
The series of God events. Yeah, actually, one of my clients.
Really?
Yeah, it was funny because I forgot they were my clients. And then he saw me and goes, yeah, you look so different out of real estate. And like, oh, that's right. I met you guys as clients.
Yeah.
And she met them at the same time and they hit it off because they're both from Hong Kong.
Okay.
And then they had a network up there and they don't want anything. They're like, no, we just want to see these people helped. And yeah, it's just a crazy series of events.
Wow.
And then now from that, so I posted on social media the other day about this situation. And our friends who are in Australia, who I called my home church when I was in that communist country, I needed a place to kind of like hang out.
Yep.
And so they would fly me down and hang out with them for a week or so at a time just to get like my head back around. And they go, you won't believe it. We are in the same exact town helping this other organization. Well, now I found there's some amazing organizations. Like, I don't want to be about our organization. I want to find ways to make them famous.
Yeah.
Like, my goal is to turn these people who are doing the work into celebrities.
Oh, wow. That's wild. That is like, when you start seeing all those things line up too, you're in the
Just
right
crazy.
spot. I mean, you're in the right spot.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I had a friend while we were up in Alaska this summer. He randomly sent me an email and prophesied over me. I said, where are you at? He goes, oh, I'm in Thailand working with the Myanmar refugees. I said, what? He actually, his prophecy described exactly where we were in Alaska.
Really?
I said to Anita, what does this sound like? I started reading. He goes, oh, it sounds like where our food truck is. Like, isn't that crazy? This is a prophecy.
Yeah.
I think he said, what? She reads it. How does he even know that? So crazy.
That's wild, man.
So yeah, so he's there as well, him and his wife and kids. But yeah, that's kind of high profile, high level focus. Oh, and then this is the thing I'm working on. It's called Brand Ambassador. And what I want to do is use all the marketing stuff that I've been doing for business and things to not only make the people working on the front lines famous, I want to make local businesses famous. So you've seen like the Aqua Golf and things like that.
Yeah.
That I want to like highlight these people, but I don't want their money.
Right.
I want them to sponsor kids. So I'll provide all these services to them if they sponsor a kid.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's my. Like, I feel like I'm in a wartime where like we can't live normal lives. We gotta, like in war, you don't get to have a normal life.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wow. That's very convicting, Jim. That's like I'm like, wow, what am I doing?
You're doing it. You're just it. Here's the thing. I feel like my job is real estate.
Yeah.
And I get to be a part of this.
Yeah.
And as a real estate agent, I get to be an example of like, yeah, you're in car lending.
Sure.
And you get to be a part of it. And all my friends, we don't have to like sell everything. I did that once before. I sold everything and it was awesome. I needed to do it at the time. But looking back, I shouldn't have sold everything.
Yeah.
There would have been a wiser way to do it. I probably would have kept my real estate business going. And I would have kept all my real estate. And I would have used all that to fund everything. And it would have had, way more funding available. So I just feel like, no, it's good. We all have roles to play.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's happened this season is God's not allowed me to fund it all myself, so that if I got taken out for whatever reason, then it doesn't die. It's going to be, it will keep lasting because it's not about JR or Anita or our business. It's a whole army of people helping these children.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that's interesting too. And I think there's always like added dependency on him too, right? When you have to diversify your resources, so to speak. And I know like for me in that, I feel like he's talking to me about that a lot too, which is just understanding what dependence looks like. Because I think a lot of times for me, if I'm not, if I am getting too much into me, like it's out of a lack of trust in him. And and I think that's probably everywhere in my life. Whereas me being the, I'll be one of the people that quotes the Enneagram, which I don't like the people that quote the Enneagram. But,
bullies me with the Enneagram.
Yeah,
I still don't know what it is.
Like, dude, so whatever. Like, I'm like, and the 3. So I'm the, whatever, like the performer, or the one that just like I like to get things done.
I think I'm 3'7",
Yeah,
3 wing 7 or
something. Like I forget what the wing is, but it's like, but either way, like I'm very quick to go, okay, Lord, like you got me here, cool, thanks, appreciate that, I'll take it from here, and I'll go to what's next. And I feel like there is a measure of just really, like if I could do it myself, it's easy for me to forget how much I need him. And it sounds like even as you're talking about it, it's like, I think that there is probably some truth to that, like in that, like diversifying and having other people pour into it and so into it is good. But I think it also just keeps all of us that much more dependent upon him, even when things are good,
right?
And I think that's probably for me the hardest. Like it's when you need him, like when things are down and out and it's hard, like it's easy to go him in from a place of lack and need, but it's different when things are good. And so, I just want to encourage you that I feel like that even as you're talking about it, like the days of plentiful and good are coming. And so just for you to be able to build that into your infrastructure now, is a way of him preparing you for the increase that's to come. So, yeah.
I'm excited about that.
You should be, man. Yeah, you should be. That's exciting. I think what you guys are doing is pretty remarkable, in spite of and on top of, like, you and Anita being mom and dad and having kids. And
that's no joke. Have you had anything test you harder than being a parent?
No, right. I will tell you right now, my 14-year-old son I am finding myself having to reparent myself. Because I would say for me, at 14 years old is really where I started. Like, that's when, like when I was a kid, like we moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. Just new school, a lot of change. And like my mom got sick, and I pretty much like pulled into myself, and I really escaped.
What kind of sick?
She had cancer, and so she had cancer, and so she fought it for a while before she ultimately passed, but that's when it first came up, and I didn't really know how to deal with that, and I think my dad was never really all that, and he's still around, but like not super in touch with his emotions, and so just really kind of probably needing a little bit more direction and just me isolating and trying to figure out what that looked like. And then for me, that was really escaping into that, pornography and all that stuff, and really just kind of reclusing myself. But that was at that age. And so now, like, finding myself in moments where it's like, oh, like, okay, dude, I've got to parent you in this. And then, I'll respond in a particular way, and then my wife will be like, why'd you do that? Like, what, what are you doing there?
I hate that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then like, don't do that, and then having those conversations of like,
I hate it and love it, but hate it.
Yeah. I would say I need to embrace humility more and love it more. I definitely hate it, but I know good. It just takes me a minute to get there. Like I want to,
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
I totally
I in the moment, I want to go, oh yeah, but
You're
don't.
right. Honey,
don't.
I
Yeah.
didn't see it from that direction.
Yeah.
You're right.
No, I definitely
I
do
should
not.
have done it differently and better.
I do not show up like that. I will require her to prove her point for a good 10 minutes before I finally go, oh crap. Yeah, that's right. So
Anita, I'm sorry.
yes, Tanessa, yes. I'm sorry. But yeah, no, for sure. So I think right now, yeah, my 14-year-old who's awesome, dude. Like honestly,
Oh yeah,
like,
he's amazing.
He's amazing. Like he's a great kid. He's got so many great positives. You know, I just typically see the things that he's not doing.
Yeah.
You know, and I need to be better at affirming and validating the good things.
Yeah, I don't want to justify that because that's where we will go.
Yeah.
Because it is so, I don't know if it's guys that just for their sons see, hey, we got an area to improve.
Yeah.
And never like celebrate. You've done all these things.
Yeah. But meanwhile too, like I'll look at myself and go like, okay, yeah, like I could be better there, but am I really going to? And it kind of goes back to that thing that I feel like the Lord told me yesterday and today too, where it's just about that whole like that laziness is wickedness thing. Like I honestly, like I felt that, and it was like almost like a fear of the Lord came over me, where it's like, oh my God, what do I do with that? And how much, like as a dad, does that transcend to how I'm parenting my kids, my son especially right now? Because you know he's obviously at the age where it's like he needs more dad than mom, but like he needs a good, healthy, helpful dad that's encouraging and inspiring, and not one that is authoritative. And
right.
And you know, and I'm all too comfortable with the authoritative side because that's what I grew up in, and so that's like. That's just, I know what that looks like. It's natural, but I also know the fruit, and I don't want that fruit for him either. You know what I mean? And so how do I do something different in that? And so I'm just constantly like, yeah, I feel like I'm coming up against that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So,
there's a lot of dads like that, me included.
yeah.
I didn't have a dad, really. I had my dad, but he was divorced and he was like the uncle who showed up once in a while.
Really?
And then my stepdad, he was great, but he was not really, like, didn't hang out with him or get to know him, really.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just kind of grew up alone. And sometimes when I was raising the kids, thinking, man, how do you do that? I don't remember anybody really showing me how you do this. But you learn, and one of the things that I realize is Holy Spirit gives you wisdom genius ideas out of nowhere. And like, oh wow, I guess that's a good thing. We should be doing that.
Yeah, it's funny. I told him last week, like, he's 14 and he's getting bigger and he pops off pretty often. Like you know. And so I told him, I was like, I was leaving for a business trip last Sunday. I told him, I was like, you can't beat me in a race. And he's like, shut up. And I was like, you can't beat me in a race, a sprint. I mean, meanwhile, like I have no idea. Like I'm 46, but I feel like I'm 25, right? And so I'm getting ready to leave. I got my bags and I'm walking to the car, and he's like, come on, let's race. And I was like, all right, like let's race. And so I walked off 40 yards. And he beat me. He beat me by a good like 3 or 4 steps. And,
wow,
which he should.
Yeah,
he's 14. Listen,
yeah.
But I told him, like, he was kind of sucking wind afterwards, and I was okay. And I was like 100 yards, you won't touch me. I'll freaking smoke you. And he's like, get out of here. And so now he and I have we've got a bet to do 100 yards, and he doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to do it because I think he knows
his last race.
Yeah, like I'm gonna smoke him. But it's funny. But it's like I went to the airport and I was flying later that day, and I'm just thinking about it and just going like, it's fun. It's fun when you get the win. Like it's fun when you get those milestones to beat dad too. But it's also just fun. And and how much time and how much intentionality am I creating around just being fun? Like not everything has to be high stakes. Not everything has to be a lesson.
Right.
Not everything has to be something that is going to change you for the rest of your life.
That's
you know
really
what I mean?
good.
Like,
yeah.
And I do. And if it's not taking out the garbage, it's like, hey dude, like you have to take out the garbage the rest of your life. Like you got to take care, you know what I mean? And I'm like, I'm making everything a freaking lesson. And it's like, and I know, and I literally see his entire countenance change.
Yeah.
And he fights the eye roll sometimes he can't, you know? and it's like, oh man, like I want him to get this so bad because I didn't get it, but you know, like, is that really the way that it's going to stick? You know, am I going to verbally beat it into him? Like, I'm not sure that's going to be the best methodology. So yeah, just trying, I don't know. So I've been kind of just working through that for the last couple of weeks where it's like, man, how do we have more fun? You know? And honestly, the other thing too is like he doesn't want to do much, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's all too happy to just sit in front of the TV and like kind of veg and I just want to chill. I'm like, dude, you don't do anything.
I need to relax.
Yeah.
From what?
From what? Yeah. What do you do? Like you're 14. Like number one, like you've got 3 times the amount of testosterone charging through your veins than I do.
Yeah.
Like you actually, and you don't do anything that necessitates relaxing, right?
Right.
Like, so,
yeah.
So what are you relaxing from? You know, and I'm not going to downplay school and rest and all that stuff because I think there's enough, you know, physiologically and medically to say that there is value obviously in their rest and all that stuff. But dude, come on, man.
Well, the thing when I was a kid, there was nothing really that interesting on TV. There might be every once, but you know, it's like a channel. Okay, it's the Cowboys and Indians. Turn the channel. Yeah. There's like news. Turn the channel. It's like really nothing on here that interesting. No. Let's go play baseball.
Yep.
And I'm looking back. We just played outside nonstop.
All the time.
It's either basketball, football, baseball, race our bikes, or as we get older, just like do something dangerous.
Yep.
And always, we never even really thought about sitting around and. There wasn't computers and TVs and phones. I mean, computers and smart TVs and phones like there is today.
Yep.
Because smart TV has changed. I'll be honest. I watched some Netflix.
100%. Oh yeah.
And I don't know if it's advanced or like I really do look back and go there's a lot of things about my childhood I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
But that part coming home from either sports or school.
Yep.
And we all met out in the road.
Yep.
And we played something.
100%.
We decided we had to decide what we're going to play.
Yep. No, we did the same thing. Like growing up back east, it was all the same thing. It was, you know, it was bikes, baseball, basketball, football. For us, there was a pond at the end of the street, so we'd go play pond hockey or street hockey in the winter. And so, I mean, that's all the stuff that we would always be doing, and it was like up until it got dark, and then we'd go back in for dinner, and then that's when dinner was when it got dark, like that.
Right.
That was it, and
then you did your schoolwork.
Yeah. I mean, and that literally like that was it, and now it's like they come home and it's like I want to relax, I want to chill. It's like, dude, bro, what are you doing?
I wonder, like, what kind of business you could start that could replace that era, or what tool you could start to replace that era to go back to that, allow kids to have that era back.
Yeah,
because I don't like a lot of things about my growing up, but I love that part.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right, man. And I don't know, like I think it's funny. So a couple of years ago. Because kids go to U Prep and the Y is right down the street. And so depending on where our schedules were, before Annabelle was driving, and we would say like, okay, if we can't get you, you know, whatever, I'm traveling or I got meetings and tennis, I had meetings or whatnot. I would say, okay, just walk over to the Y, you know, and inevitably like there'd be kind of like the same kids or the kids would have friends and then they would like Jackson be out playing basketball or doing something or again, or doing something, right? And I wonder too if like, I wonder if we are not the bad example that they have in that, meaning like,
Right. It's, we hear the ones that showed them that.
yeah, right. Like I'm wondering, because we know, like, listen, there are kids on our street or in our neighborhood that my son is friends with, that literally, like, I mean, there are some times where our friend's son, who's a year younger, is in the same basketball program that is down the end of the street shooting hoops at the same time that Jackson's in our driveway shooting hoops. And it's like, hey dude, why don't you go down there? Or why, you know, and it's like, why don't we do that? It's like, nah, I'm good. And it's like, okay, like, it's interesting. Like it's an interesting perspective.
Well, you think about like with men right now, just in general, like the Adventure Club.
Yeah.
The reason we've done that is because men don't hang out together.
No.
Like,
I would say I would say like I am void of good male friendships in my life, and it's funny because I'll make excuses, right? Well, it's like, oh, I travel every other week for work, so it makes it more difficult. It's like, yeah, maybe is that a reason or is that just an obstacle? You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like, you know, and but am I also intentionally pursuing that too? Mm-hmm. It's like, well, no. Okay, so
right.
So how much of that do I have to own too? Because and I do, you know, I'll tell you, man. It's yeah, I agree with you. You know, yeah, I don't know that my son necessarily sees me having and pursuing a lot of great relationships.
Well, it was kind of the reason. One of the many reasons for starting the Adventure Club was I can't name one man my dad was a friend with. When we went up to deal with his estate, I kind of called all the people I could think of who were somehow connected to him, and nobody's like, "Oh no, I haven't seen your dad for years. I don't know. No, nobody, not one friend."
Wow.
And yeah, even the church that apparently he was going to, they didn't. Like, I said, "How do you know my dad?" Don't really. Actually, I just was told to come down here. Like, oh, wow,
that's sad.
Like but that's not unusual.
No. It's not.
That's kind of a normal thing for that generation, especially, but it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, I would say similar. Like, yeah, it's been interesting. So, like, my parents went to the same high school, and they've got friends from high school that they were friends with. My mom has since passed, but like my dad has a group of guys they went to high school with that he's still friends with today, which is actually pretty remarkable.
That is amazing.
And they go on a golf trip every year, and they do that, which is pretty neat. But again, I would say outside of that, like, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know. I'm sure he's got friends, but it's interesting. Like, so I can't say that I have the same experience as my dad with yours, but I will tell you, like, I do absolutely feel that. Like, I feel that void for me in my life. And yeah, and then honestly, like, I probably make too many excuses for why it's there instead of trying to do something about it too.
Well, we're busy.
Sure.
I mean, to be honest, at the end of the day, how tired are you?
I'm exhausted, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, if it were up to me, I'd be in bed by 9 o'clock every night.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, that's God's honest truth. Like,
and then on weekends, you're kind of like, I just need some time.
Yeah. If we're not going to basketball tournaments, or if we're not,
right.
You know what I mean? Like that's, or whatever. So, yeah. I mean, yeah.
So I have to put on my calendar, or I will be a loner. And a lot of people think that I'm like the social butterfly. I can walk into any crowd of people and like make 100 friends. Last night was a really good example. I was a bunch of real estate agents who are in my same group. Mm-hmm. I know them, but I don't know them. But I walked in and I kind of stood on the edge and kind of say, oh, who do I know here? Mm-hmm. And then someone came to me, talked to them for a while, and then found the next person came to me, talked to them for a while, and then talked to 3 people and left. Yeah.
I'm with you, man. I would say that is definitely me. Like those are work. Like that's work for me, man. Like I'm with you in that. Like if I have to go to like a conference or a meeting or something to that effect, like I've got I've got a meeting I got to go to back in Indiana in probably 3 weeks, and I'm looking at it. I'm not dreading it, but I'm not looking forward to it. And it's because it's just one of those things where it's like meetings all day, dinner at night, anywhere between 20 and 30 people. And it's that thing where it's like, oh yeah, man, like I've always got to be, quote unquote on,
right.
And that's exhausting. Like
it is.
And for me, like that is draining on another level. And so to just do that and to be like, okay, how am I going to manage my downtime? Like, what does that look like? You know what I mean? Because mornings start at 8, meetings end at 5, dinners usually start at 6 or 6:30, and then so it's like, and then go till whenever, and that's it's 4 straight days of that.
30-second connection, 30-second connection, 30-second connection, 30-second, and like, ugh.
Yeah, and honestly and genuinely, like there are some people that I see twice a year that I'm going to look forward to seeing, and then everybody else is just going to be work, you know, and that for me is just like mentally and emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like them in some cases. Some of them I love. Like,
You're right.
I agree, but it's just it is effort, man.
Because there's that startup of just even like this first hour. I noticed each time first hour is like we're just kind of getting relaxed.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And you have 30 seconds. It's sort of like the same thing of people ask me to speak in church. And we'll give you 5 minutes. Like, okay, what do you want to cover in 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, describe God.
Yeah.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck. good luck. Yeah. No, I think that's hard. I also think too, man, like I'll speak for myself. Like I think there's a required superficiality that comes with it. Right. Where it's like
doing great.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, doing great. But like honestly, like I'm not sure that really I want to go that much deeper with you, or that or that it's even appropriate, right? Because I'll tell you, like I have one employee that works for me, and she is entirely too socially comfortable with pretty much a lot of her relationships above her, or it just is like is not appropriate. And not in a bad way, but like in a way where it's just she struggles to find that balance of like professionalism and wanting more connection, but like not being able to appropriately assess the situation for what is actually called for, and I've had to have some conversations with her about it, and just to be like, listen, I understand what it is you're looking for and where you're at, but like that's a great need for you to get met in more of a social environment and less of a professional one. But there's that constant having to navigate that tension,
Right.
And it's like how much is too much, how much is appropriate. And I'll tell you, man, I work for a company that they love their DEI, man, and I am, and
they want to die.
So yeah, and obviously that's not something that I agree with. Like I love to hire for diversity, but when I'm hiring people and I'm looking for diversity, I'm looking for diversity of experience. I'm looking for diversity of background, whether that also comes with gender or nationality or whatever. Okay, great. Like that's probably, I mean, my wife says that's, that's probably one of the least interesting things about you, because you can't control. Like I want to know you. Like who are you?
The least interesting thing is your color.
Yeah, like
hair color, eye color, skin color. I don't care.
Yeah. But talk to me about what makes you you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And those are the things that I think matter the most. And yet at the same time, like just realizing that I actually have to be in this environment, and I have to limit how I show up, because there are certain positions that I just can't. I know that I can't take, or other people have license to take the other position, and there really isn't room for a contrary viewpoint either. So it's like, okay, I have to.
She can't say anything.
No, you just sit there.
It's
You just kind of sit there and shut up and roll with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
like,
that's exhausting.
can be. I mean, it can be.
Unless it's entertaining, which is how
could-
my brain will sit there
Yeah.
and like laugh about the insanity and then talk about it to my friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is true. Like, and there's a lot of times that I'll debrief and I'll come and I'll talk to Jess. I'll be like, man, you gotta like, this just happened. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You know, like, I mean, so yeah. But again, going back to what you're talking about too, just with the whole guy thing. Like, I do think that is. I think we're starved for that. Like, I just don't think it's valued. I don't think I have the appropriate value for it either. I think you almost have to create those events, like, which I'm grateful for you for the Adventure Club, even though I never go.
Well, you're kind of busy in the last 2 years.
It's been a little bit, but like even in just going and bonfire and having a cigar like that. I mean, that was great, dude. Like,
Yeah.
I don't do that, but same thing. You know, when you got 15, 18 guys there, that's not my shtick, man. I'm
Right.
more of like hey, like 3, 4, maybe 5 at
Yeah.
most, but like that's kind of my speed. But listen, man, I thought it was great. So
Well, that's where we need. I'm thinking we need to do just a monthly, weekly
yeah,
bonfire guy night, where just like, okay, gonna meet my guys. We're gonna have a bonfire.
yeah. No, man. There's no downside to it. I mean, I think even if it was, and again, like I don't think nobody got real deep that night. It was just everybody's just kind of like just hanging out, having a good time.
I didn't really. I was in a fog that
you
whole day.
You weren't feeling it well, huh?
I was in a fog physically, but also there was something harassing me. And that was what ended last Friday.
Yeah.
But it was like, man, what is going on with me? And so I was afraid to even talk because I didn't know what was going to come out of my. Am I going to be like the whining girl that sits
Yeah.
at
That's
the
all right.
bonfire?
Yeah.
Or what am I going to be? Because I really didn't know what was going on inside me.
Yeah.
But we need guys, like we need to have I felt refreshed by just hanging out there.
Yeah. Well, it's good.
It definitely helped.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could tell, and there were guys that obviously needed to get stuff off their chest, and there were other dudes that just wanted to keep it light and social. And,
Yeah.
And I think all those things are great, you know.
Yeah, but I think smaller ones are good. Like
Yeah.
it was a little too big for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I just know me, like, and I know me usually, and once it gets to a certain point, it's like there's a lot of people there, and then you're
Yeah.
trying to like, just find. That's the thing, is that's what I feel like is tiring, is just trying to figure out where to fit into the conversation.
Yeah.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
because you've got other people that are trying to talk, and usually it's like one or two people that are
Dominant.
like the more outgoing or extroverted or powerful voice or you know, and then it's just work, dude. It's just work for me
Yeah.
at that
I
point.
totally agree to that.
Yeah.
So it's fun sometimes to do some
Yeah.
bonfires.
Yeah.
Cigars, bonfires, and whiskey.
Yeah. You can come over, we can cold plunge in the pool and then just go warm up in front of a fire, and
That's a good idea.
yeah, dude, I know.
Well, with that, I think that's a pretty good 3-hour experience.
Wow, bro. Yeah. That was
Ended on a cold plunge.
There you go. There you go. That's yeah.
Man, this has been fun. This is therapeutic to me. I don't know how you enjoy it, but
good, man.
I really enjoy this because when do we get a chance to just like nonstop be able to just riff?
No, never.